Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a Ko-Fi, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now, we are joined by Adam, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Flat Earth Debate Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Mush.
Hello, hello.
Morning, Adam.
Lively crowd today.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've all been suitably warmed up for the show. We will do a little bit of housekeeping. Hopefully that'll get people in the mood. We'll see how it goes. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
93 million miles away.
Yeah, that's Keplerian and Huygens based, though, isn't it? That's not a measurement.
Yeah, but I think they need a flat Earth to even get that, correct?
Yeah, they'll need to derive R by measuring Polaris's minimum. Anything else?
So how can we get that changed? Because they're still teaching it in school books. What would you do to go about making a move on that to prove that they are wrong and those school books need to be changed?
You just have to look out for yourself. You and I both homeschool our kids, right?
Yeah, but what about for the greater good of man? You know? Well, wouldn't you do the same thing if they were teaching 2 + 2 is now 8? I don't understand why they're getting away with this.
I don't know. Perhaps society needs a modicum of control that has been employed in this manner and we are just unaware of it. That is to say that without this control, be it religious-based in the case of heliocentrism or taxation-based, I don't know, maybe we'd have a collapse of society and a gentle introduction to the reality of our situation after an explosion of heliocentric rhetoric throughout the last 200 or 300 years needs a gentle massage so that we don't have a societal collapse or a rebellion against the people who keep us in check, because we need to be kept in check. For all I know, humanity at a societal level might become unruly if we're not kept under control to a certain degree. Now, I don't know that's the case. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm just saying, when people ask us why would they lie, maybe it's for the greater good. You just don't know. It's irrelevant when you can demonstrate the reality of your situation and how the belief of the situation is based on the measurement of the reality of the situation. That's flat. That really is all we need to concern ourselves with. The psychological implications, the trauma that it might befall people when they find this out, the lies that they may try and comprehend for the other people that aren't us that have led them to believe something that isn't necessarily the case. Those are their concerns, Neil. There's not a great deal we can do in terms of becoming the great unwashed counsellor after we expose the reality of the world to them in terms of how it's measured and how their belief of a globe came from those measurements. That's all we can do. Now, maybe there'll be a great boom in counselling, when people realise this information, and it's very traumatic for them to realise that they're not floating through a sky vacuum at millions of miles an hour. What can you do? If you're teaching something in a class and it undermines something that the students believed in until you demonstrated it to be contrary to their belief in reality, what are you going to do? Counsel them after you've shown them and demonstrated a principle to them that just holds true always, for example? What do you do? Oh, you found that traumatic because you believe differently prior to me demonstrating the truth of the situation to you. Should that person also be trained in counselling, Neil? Some education systems would say yes.
Well, I don't know. It
You
just
can't
seems
change the
like
world.
they're getting away with a lie. They're getting away with teaching our children something that's not true.
What was that, Duncan?
You can't change the world. Sorry, you can't change the world. You can only affect personal relationships.
Yes. Which is why it's a little bit sad when we're appealing to people who want to change the world by trying to communicate
Hold on
through...
a second.
Okay. Well,
Hold on. Who says you can't change the world? I know quite a few people in history that have changed the world. I'm saying we keep plugging in, yeah, but other people have to get on board. People that are sending children to school and they're not being taught what Earth is. They're being taught a life for whatever reason they're given for teaching this nonsense. There needs to be an uprooting, really, of the whole education system, in my opinion.
well, you've exercised your right to educate your kids in the way you see fit, as opposed to what you now know to be lies, as you put them, but things that aren't correct, and you'd prefer your kids weren't exposed to those inaccuracies about, in this instance, the way the world's measured, and that's your prerogative.
Yeah, but even in the curriculums that my wife has to choose from, it's the same thing. She's got to teach heliocentrism.
And you can. I do. I teach my kids about heliocentrism frequently.
Yeah, my wife does too, but she knows.
Why wouldn't you?
I don't know. It just seems like we're getting.
I would see it as a failure on my part if my kids entered the world not knowing the majority of Western world viewpoint in terms of what their, now obviously this is our language, belief leads them to envisage the world to be. Well, if my kids had no concept of that, they would always end up in confrontational situations when they found themselves, without realising it, challenging a fundamental belief that somebody they're just chatting with has. If they have an appreciation of, this is the Western world view, this is what the majority of people you will encounter in life view the world to be, and then you describe it to them, they'll understand it from that perspective. It's a very different tack to, in a school, you are on a ball. That's different, isn't it, Neil? You don't educate your kids in that way, neither do I. That's our prerogative to do so.
Correct.
But you'd do them a disservice, wouldn't you, if you didn't teach them of the Western world religion of heliocentrism? They still need to know about it. Now, need to know about it from a societal point of view only, in my humble opinion.
That's
Absolutely
my point.
correct.
So, my kids go to a state school, or went, grown up now. So I had two jobs as a parent there. One, to make sure they could pass their comprehensive education by reciting what they were asked to recite. The second job, and more important, was for me to share my knowledge and understanding of that knowledge and question it with them and go through it with them. But they've still got to pass the exams. And unfortunately, this heliocentric paradigm is part of it. So you've got to train them to pass that. And if they were intelligent enough to know it, then you can explain why you as their parent disagree with it and then present them the evidence.
Listen to what you're saying. And I understand what you're saying, and I'm with you 100%. But listen to what you're saying. We have to, by curriculum, teach our children something that is a bunch of baloney.
Yeah, that's right.
Not even real.
Okay, so my youngest son, Arch, he's doing history as one of his A levels. Yeah, do I believe that? No. Yeah, but he's got to learn it, and so it's just I'd just as much skepticism when he gets to the part of the Middle Ages where nothing happened for 600 years, But he's got to be able to recite that to pass the exam. But then, as my son, I want him to know that the ridiculousness of the statement that's being described to him, and for him to apply his thinking and his intellect to those statements that he's being presented as fact,
Right,
and then let him make his own
and
decision.
understand the process of why you might learn something to then unlearn it. For example, you go into I don't know, I can only draw on my own experience. Let's say you go into real estate or estate agency, and you have to pass a certain exam in order to do the job. Now, when you get to the job, they explain that the exam that you took isn't necessarily the process that you'll always follow, even though that's the law of the land and all the rest of it, because of X, Y, and Z that makes the process, not so easy to follow if you're just doing it on a daily basis, right? But under certain circumstances, you must absolutely follow it in that way because of X, Y, and Z rules that need to be followed for X, Y, and Z reasons. And then you understand that there's parameters, but you've had to learn the exam to understand the parameters in the first place. So you had to regurgitate it correctly for you to understand the principle behind it. Now, the same is true for heliocentrism. You don't have to spin it in a negative light if you understand the history of it. What's the purpose? Why are they doing it? What is it being used for? What predictions are they expanding out this system for? Once you understand all of that, you can then explain it in its useful, practical application and nothing more. Now, when I specifically explain the reification, not in those words or terms, of the model to my children, it's for the what we call garbage that the schools would teach him, which is all through context. Yeah, the facts of heliocentrism are seldom adhered to by our opponents here on Flat Earth Debate. That's not to say that they're loose. It's to say that they've been reified, and then problems that occur get explained away by the participants in the reification. Well, you don't have to educate your kids to participate in the reification to understand how and why that model exists, what it was used for. Now, the abuse of the model is to say that we're actually standing in that world. We're not. And the measurements that create that world defy the idea of reifying it into a global world that we can stand on. We can't. But again, that's all part of the societal level reification. And it's, to some extent, I still have to educate them in that so that they understand where they will, my children this is, will cause offence if they challenge somebody's religion where it isn't necessarily useful to do so. Let people be.
All right, let me ask you a question. When you say that it was to better predict when Easter would be, that can't be the reason for the whole, let's just call it a lie, because it is, for the whole lie. And what do they mean by predictions? Are they confusing how they can predict when certain things are happening?
No, so think about the crucifixion, okay? When it happened, how Passover moves to different dates every single year. So that Passover, that crucifixion Passover, was a specific date in the solar calendar. Okay, now they didn't want it moving around as much as Passover and Eid would do, yeah, based on the cycles of the moon. So they wanted to get the fixed date of when that Passover was and then keep it in the solar calendar, removing the moon, so that the date of Easter would then be based upon a certain amount of days after the solstice, those same number of days after the crucifixion Passover would have been after. So then it's linked to that, is my understanding, so that it's fixed within the solar calendar and not linked to the Jewish calendar anymore, which is lunar based.
Yeah, there are certain,
and when they say,
and they get that from they get that from the luminary patterns. When we say solar calendar, lunar calendar, do these things match? No, they don't. So can you time one thing on the other? No, you can't. So you have to have a unified system so that you can have a way of predicting it on one calendar, because other things will occur that you can predict based on what actually occurs in the sky. Now, if certain patterns don't match your cycle, I don't want to say prediction, what's the word? Cycle tracking, then you've got a problem when you say, well, Easter should come after this full moon. and then it doesn't, because the cycles of the lights in the sky don't match with your calendar, then you've got a problem when you're telling people that Easter's going to be sometime that it isn't actually supposed to be. So that's when you have astronomers charged with the task of better explaining things like epicycles, so that they can get better motional awareness of where things will be at what time, and then tally them to whatever calendar they're using, so that they can say, on this date, Easter will be. But they need to know what the stars are actually going to be doing and certain patterns they hadn't figured out yet. So you have to have some out-of-the-box thinking, which results in, without going through the full history, what we now know as the heliocentric model. So you've got excellent mathematicians with outside-of-the-box thinking trying to conjure a way of describing a cycle with other patterns that will tie up together in their predictive methodology. And the predictive methodology they come up with is called heliocentrism. Now, is it to say that the out-of-the-box thinking of motions of orbit is actually the way that the world functions before our very eyes? Absolutely not. But it's a way of mathematically describing those measured angles and cycles in a out-of-the-box manner that seems to tally up better and give you a better chance of predicting when things will be versus your own calendar. So that's why they take these out-of-the-box ideas and put them into motion in inverted commas so that those predictions better work. So from that point of view, you can admire what the heliocentric model is, but it doesn't make it so. It doesn't mean the ground is curved. How that has come to fruition, in my opinion, is through the people who've been told it. It's a misinterpretation. That is to say that once people have the motion explained to them, they go, all right, so that means we're stood on a ball then. And from there, it expands out at an exponential rate over 200 or 300 years to the point where the entire Western world society actually take that reification from birth through their entire lives. So yeah, Neil, we should teach our kids what this is because it's part of our world, whether we like it or not. Doesn't mean it's real, but in the mind's eye of the people we deal with on a day-to-day basis, for the most part, it is. Now, back in the day, when we were new to it and probably had no right in doing so, people would go out on the street and do what they termed flat smacking. That is to say, dropping this information bomb on people when they weren't prepared for it in the slightest. And in normal day-to-day living, that is not justified. It's not reasonable. In my opinion. I'm waiting for someone to disagree and say, no, we need to wake up the world. I thought it'd be Neil. He's just gone silent.
Sorry. I'm doing something. Yeah,
No,
I got it.
I mean, it almost seems hypocritical for me to take this viewpoint because obviously I've got a show talking about it. But we're not algorithmically favoured, so I've got absolutely no guilt. People will be finding their way to here of their own volition, friend or foe. Which is good in a way. We have a very, very focused audience here, which I like. Shout out to all of you. 85, 86 people watching. Numbers going up. We do actually have a video to cover, although I was hoping to just chit-chat today about what's going on generally in the community that we call Flat Earth. Be as part of it or not.
Starting a ball of rolling then, Nathan. Which bit?
Well,
there was a bit that's intrigued you yesterday, so elaborate on that. And
not especially. It's just nice sitting around listening to you guys shoot the breeze about, you know, the interpersonal relationships between some of the videographers, the general community that we have cross-platform between those videographers and how they react to us and support us or don't support us, things like that. I'm being vague so that you guys can kick the conversation off, but it may not be possible, as I've tried in the past and it's failed, to get that organic discussion that happens after we stop recording to reoccur.
It was a bit yesterday.
What community?
There you go. That's the type of reaction. What community? Well, that's sometimes how I view it, Neil. I feel like I personally, and I'm not being arrogant or excluding you two from this, have built a community And that community is a subdivision of an already existing flat earth community that wants a higher standard. I'm proud of the fact that we've achieved that standard within our subdivision of that community. But as a whole, I think the fragmented flat earth community has been usurped by anti-flat earthers in algorithmic terms. So all they get is the representation of the public, that is, of what anti-flat earthers say we are. Very few people will just actually find out what any of the fractured up flat earth community really is, because as you say, Neil, I don't think there is necessarily one at all. There's the perception of one, and the straw man version of what anti-flat earthers say is one.
Hold on. Not only anti-flat earthers, but there's a community of fantasists out there. I don't consider them part of this community that you're building and have built.
It's come from that rubble.
I disagree there. I think they're just a few steps behind us. There are parts in the past where I thought about the feast of nonsense, and until it's pointed out or you work through it, you've only got what's available to you. And you're very chuffed with yourself that you've managed
Adam,
to
it's
detect.
been 10 years, Adam.
Not very long.
It's been 10 years.
Not very long.
And people are still in it.
You need a full generation, really.
So there will be, won't there? It's only 10 years. Now, there are disparate groups in that. Some believe in ice walls, some have different standards, some refuse to postulate stuff because they're sick of what got them there. But there's lots of people at different stages that are all rejecting the ball. And I'm proud of where I'm at. I can't expect everybody to instantly get there. The simple fact, I'm happy if somebody claims there's an ice wall in a way, because I know that they're off the ball. There's less work to do on that person than there is the ardent heliocentrist. So outcome is not necessarily, you know what I mean? To have all these people that ascribe to how we view it and the standards we ask them to apply, which has got what got us off the ball, I think is a little bit hopeful. And you should see the positive that there's that many. Remember, Flat Earth's been dying for 6 years. Look at Sabine's numbers. There are places we are placing our objections. I think what's disappointing is, and what you allude to, people that have been there as long as us that still can't see the wood for the trees. Yeah, they still can't realise that to accept one just so story after rejecting another is puts you back to square one. You're no better off.
I'll give you, for instance, my wife was showing me TikTok that they have a separate area in TikTok for Flat Earth. And what do you think was in this Flat Earth? A guy laughing at something NASA was doing in space. Like, this is where we are after 10 years.
That's certainly where we started.
Yeah, that's intentional. What we call the feast of nonsense is the road paved before us, before we got here. Right? The argument and narrative that they'd like or prefer us as an opposition to be putting forth to them if we're going to oppose them. So it's hard to be critical of a road that we have also trodden. Now, for me, it seems weird that although I was looking at psychopathy and subliminal messages, maybe that's why I got bundled in with you're a conspiratard here, have a bit of flat earth in the algorithm, right? Because everybody who's got here all seem to have got here along the same conspiratorial route, so that we can be categorized as nutters and conspiratards. Because there's a good chance if you've come via a conspiratorial route, you're going to be of that ilk and therefore easy to oppose, because you're going to draw out the conspiratorial aspects rather than the mathematical proof or the scientific evidence, as we have done. So we're unique in that regard. We've broken away from the path that we still trod to get here of conspiracy. It makes no odds if you immediately land from after rolling down the hill and start arguing like I did with Jesse Spots about Mandela effect, or if you get down the bottom and go, surely it's still a ball, let's start arguing with everyone down here. It makes no odds. The path is the same for all of us, including the anti-flat earthers.
Hold on a second. I had no choice. That's all that was available, was what I now recognize as the feast of nonsense.
That's my point.
You're missing the point that 10 years have passed.
That is my point.
And
You're saying it's all out available? I'm saying, yeah, all that was made available for you to get to this subject was the Feast of Nonsense. It's like you walk through the looking glass, and immediately the table with the Feast of Nonsense is the first thing that you come across. Immediately.
Yeah, but it's different now.
No, it's not.
You have your channel.
You've just moaned 20 seconds ago that on TikTok you got a special flat Earth section for them to promote the Feast of Nonsense. Yeah, shocking. That makes total sense. Yeah. So what they've done is let's make priority way for the Feast of Nonsense flat earthers. Yeah, that makes total sense.
I understand. There's a reason for it. I got you.
Yeah. So in a way, yeah, the guy who's looking at, I don't know, an actual avenue of science isn't going to be put onto the road of flat Earth because it's so far out of his wheelhouse. We've kept detached. So the protagonists in the flat Earth aren't, generally speaking, your Sabines and your Dr. Beckys and your people like that. They're very few and far between. I mean, we do have obviously a few examples of that. People like Dr. John Dee. But, you know, for the most part, those people don't come across this subject. When they do, they're your Brian Mullins, and they get chased out of the community because to have somebody with some credentials in the community is definitely not what they wanted the path to lead, you know, the mice to come down this path to. We're the mice, Brian Mullen and Dr. John Dee are not. You know, and they want to dangle the societal level punishments that might befall them if they promote these subjects. And if they're not enforced by rules and regulations, they'll be enforced by the great and washed who will enforce it of their own volition, no matter how horrible it might be for them to do so. They don't care. They're in pain because they're losing their globe faith. We've seen it. That's not who they want here promoting this stuff, is it?
Well, you know what it is, too? As I'm thinking, because I'm realizing now, my brother told me about this, and that was, what, in 2015, 2016? And it's the amount that you put in. That's what you're going to get out of it. He's got a business to run, so he checks in here and there, but he still brings up Feast of Nonsense stuff to me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm trying to explain to him how sorry, Chris, if you're listening, but it's true. You bring up Feast of Nonsense all the time. Talk about ice walls, talk about domes, although I don't think that's a Feast of Nonsense. That's another story. But he's not at the level where we're at because he has the business to run. And he checks in here and there. But it's something you got to put time into. And if you don't, you're going to be stuck in a Feast of Nonsense.
I want to read out a comment from one of my members on yesterday's live show. LLB Store, shout out to you. When a flat earther enters a debate with a big global platform, we'll typically try to frame the discussion as flat earth on trial, open brackets. How does this work? How does that work? Or even more condescending with the flat earth psychosis. How did you come to flat earth? How was your childhood? Close brackets. If you have an objective, you better have a good elevator pitch ready so you can start clear of their red herrings and prove the earth is measured flat. I did a bit of a bad job reading that out, but there we go. That's pretty much how it was worded. But you get the general gist of what LLB Store is saying, which is to say, you, me, and everyone else typically have got a mindset that we seem to need to justify the questions asked of us by people in pain who are contemplating the idea of rejecting a reality they've been born into on the spot, and therefore their pain in terms of what they contemplate is put onto you as a flat earther, with the notion of earth being flat being on trial.
And that's not necessarily true, because I had them same questions when my brother told me about it. I threw everything at him. I was like, what about GPS? What about NASA? What about the moon landing? What about... I hit him with everything. For 2 weeks, I literally made fun of him and berated him.
Yeah, but those are, as I just said, those are all your concerns. I think what LLB Store's driving at is when you actually get into the nitty-gritty of a focused discussion about the subject, like on a show.
When we were doing the European tour, part of the considerations were that, and that's why it was rebranded the Globe Lite tour. This is what, 2019, is it? Whenever I got rumbled in Italy. But on that was the point of changing the name. Not my position, but lots of other people's wanted to change it to that because that's what they felt they could address. What they couldn't address to the man on the street when we're doing activism is answer those specific questions because we don't know. And that's no use. So back in the day, that's how it was decided to deal with that, rebrand it, not Flat Earth, Globe Lightor, so that you focused on the lies that were being given to you. That was the point of the debates on the streets. This was pre-Black Swan. This was pre-celestial navigation. Because we couldn't demonstrate Flat Earth as a proof, yeah? All we had was that back in the day. And that's why we're so strong now. So why Nathan keeps reiterating that front foot forward. We don't have to deal with those. Well, how does this work? How does this work? How do the stars work? How, you know what I mean? All of those things. We can still debunk the globe if needs to, but we front-footedly, we say, I don't know how that works. I don't know how the moon works, but I'll tell you how it's measured. And we can give non-feast of nonsense proofs for Flat Earth now. But that's what they always want, is some unanswerable question. What is the sun? Etc. And if you can't give the answer, that's sufficient empowerment for their cognitive dissonance to wash away any of the other problems that they may have brought them there. If you can't give them a new paradigm.
Right, got to become their new guru. Shout out to Michael Jones. He says, back when Owen Benjamin started talking about FE, I heard about Nathan Oakley, then it might take a while to understand what he says, but it will be worth it. Still here. Oh, thank you very much. Wow, really appreciate it. 100 people watching. Excellent sentiment to send out to 100 plus people, Michael. Thank you so much for the super chat. It really is heartwarming and complimentary. I'm blushing.
What do you mean it might take a while to understand?
What he says.
Who's Owen Benjamin talking about?
We literally have to split people into two categories now. Ones that just want to know what's what and get on with their day, and ones that want to debate the subject. Well, I assume the context is in terms of having such a solid understanding that you can go home and when you tell your brother-in-law that it's a flat earth and he starts laughing at you and asking you what about NASA, what about whatever the list of stuff that Neil just rattled off, you can go, who cares, it's measured flat, here's an example, and tell him about celestial navigation, baselines, mapping, etc, etc, etc. Well, that requires you to have the ability to also overcome the person who's babbling on about NASA and therefore have a good understanding about space being fake. But for the guy who just wants to know how Earth is dealt with and measured, he can listen to an elevation angle argument in a 2-minute elevator pitch and go, oh, wow, I never knew Earth was flat, and get on with his day. But that person definitely won't be able to argue with somebody who says, what about all the pictures from space? Oh, I only tuned in for 20 minutes of flat Earth debate. Yeah, you need to stick around, don't you, Neil?
Absolutely. That's why I'm still here.
Subscribe today if you've not done so already.
I think Adam's 100% right. Going forward on the front foot, and if we have to, we can still smash the globe.
Yeah, the path we all led is the path we all led. But today, the Globe Light Tour would be utterly condemned by me, wouldn't it, Adam?
I would condemn it too.
Yeah, and I would have objected. Yeah, not like I did back then because I didn't have anything to put on the table solid. Yeah, all we did have back then was say, look at this, look at this, look at all these issues. Yeah, but we have something now, and that's hence the stance. Front foot forward. Yeah, make that statement first. Yeah, which we can. Then, if they need further convincing and entertainment, you can take the ball apart with them. But we do have the ability now to make a positive statement first. What did we have in 2019? Genuinely,
You didn't have
belief
that.
of an ice ball.
You didn't have
No.
that, and I tentatively told my audience that. I'm like, I don't like any of the current flat Earth proofs. I wouldn't necessarily stand behind them, but what I can do is take apart your positive claim of a globe. Obviously, that's what's going to be put to us positively. Now, It's like, what are you doing? Why are you even bringing up the globe? That's not your position. All they'll do is fight you in false dichotomy, with the only thing being on the table, the globe, and whether or not it works. Start with the flat earth and proving it's measured that way. If they go to the globe, tell them how their globe came from the measurements you started with. You'll never lose.
I remember when I first heard you break down the affirming the consequent formological fallacy. That blew me away. That was the first time I ever heard something like that. And I was like, I like what's being said here. I'm going to stick around. And of course, you had QE coming in. That's why he doesn't realize how important that is. I can imagine new listeners, and they're tuning in, they get QE here and QE there. But I couldn't wait. Like, if I was on a show, just listening at the time, when QE would be there, or when this one would be there, or when 10th Man was there. And they weren't there. It just didn't have the same punch to me. And people are hungry for that. So where are you, QE?
Yeah, I was hungry for it. The start of that was pink writing and science, going back 5 years. That was the start of
Yes.
whipping us into order in terms of being a formidable opponent to a globe believer. Right up to the standard we're at now, where we're taking apart PhDs because the argument doesn't change regardless of your credentials. Well, there's been a long disciplinarian path that's led us here, and now that we're here, we have to turn back on the other people and say, well, if you want to be one of the troops, you've got to discipline yourself in the same fashion.
It also took time for us all to meet up. You know, if you think back, QE found me. He's watching flat Earth stuff. I'm watching flat Earth stuff. I never knew about QE. He said hello to me when I'm dealing with Pete and Peter. Yeah. So this is Feast of Nonsense, like prime time. So this is what the state wanted, or the powers that be wanted.
Guys.
The message. Choco, you're right, bro. I'm dealing with Pete and Peter. Yeah. So they pumping such pseudoscience that hydrogen doesn't exist. I end up making hydrogen gas and exploding it live on it. You know what I mean? In me shed, to deal with these guys who then, when they found out I was a chemist, refused to talk to me and just went into ad hom. Very telling about the number of plants that were in this community to make sure the Feast of Nonsense was what was led forward. Yeah. But that's when we start to meet up. So I'm with Iron Realm. QE's doing his bit. He's found Nathan, and he goes, "Oh, I like this guy. He's talking about cis-trans isomerism and doing, you know what I mean?" And it took time for those that have built the argument today to meet up, get together, and do what we've done over the past, I would say, 4 or 5 years, which is to build the argument of flat Earth proofs, which this panel, all of us, have contributed to really well, especially after show times, when we argue and get down to the nitty gritty. Argue, but respectfully, you know?
Not necessarily
heated
that
sometimes.
respectfully.
Oh, no.
Good morning, guys.
We said hello to you.
Passionate, but
Hello.
it was always respectful. Hey, Chuck.
So, brother.
Oh, good. We're reminiscing.
Well, because of the extended times of shows, like I always want that more. When I was trying to explain that we hadn't recorded what was detailed yesterday, you can't capture those things when everyone's like, "If you stopped recording, we're definitely not live streaming. Have you got rid of Discord?" Yes. All right. And then the conversation begins in that earnest manner that is off the air, off the record, right? And then for whatever reason, that's when people are at their best. Yeah. And you just can't capture it. Now, by having an extended show, like more than 2 hours, typically this show's only designed to last 2 hours. That's the intended duration. But it ends up being 4. Why? Well, because after a certain amount of time, people forget that they're being recorded or stop caring. And then you have those conversations. So they're normally 2.5, 3 hours into the show, if they last that long. And even then, like I say, you'll end the show and I'll be like, I could record all day. No worries. You know, because of the concentrated manner of everybody on the panel. And there's a tertiary panel in Discord that are also almost as focused. So there ends up being some exceptionally good conversations that take place on Flat Earth Debate. And like I say, I could record all day long. It's just that's the only bit I contribute really, because I'm not doing any research. It's the wrangling aspect, is it? You know, keeping a time, keeping a schedule, having it be that point where people know that if they're going to air some particular issue, that's the time to do it, because it'll get more focus, it'll get more attention. But just keeping my discipline to keep the show going has meant that there has been that focus, and you know, a community is built out of that. I'm very proud of that, even if it is a minor aspect to the actual discussion points. The problem with having a super head on your shoulders and great discussion points, if you haven't got a sort of PR team behind you, how's anybody ever going to know about it? And that's what I hustled. I hustled QE into becoming a videographer because he absolutely did not want to do that. You know, he tentatively started passing his information through Cathexis, but he just didn't want to be what he is now. Now, obviously, he's very much warmed into that that role, and now he's got bloody soundboards and sounds like an 80s DJ. So he's definitely warmed up to it. But at one point, I had to really, really convince him to do it. He did not want to know. He's like, no, I've made this channel to be a videographer. That's not what it's for. Well, you know, and I encouraged him, and eventually he did do it. So, you know, I'm glad of that, if nothing else.
Remember the subscribe.
I remember the day that got done. Sorry.
Right, I'm just again, exactly. That was you driving it, and then there was a number of shows. Subscribe to QE. Subscribe to QE.
Yeah, but how did it start?
Oh, that was it. It was to get him up, because I remember Nathan getting him to that point. You've got to do this. Right. Well, your channel's got no subscribers. Right. So, and you have to get it up to 1,000. You need to get it back in the day to be able to do stuff. They're all parts of the journey. Good parts.
I've done it with loads of
Wasn't
people.
the first
It's
show?
not just QE.
Wasn't the first show after the Globebusters incident?
I can't remember that particular part of the timeline.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's loads of videographers that I've gone through that process with, which is to say, make videos. You know, do as I do. It's something I can advise you on. I think Chocolate couldn't hear us last time he joined. That's probably why he repeatedly said hello. Can you hear us this time, Chocolate?
Yep. Mic check.
Yeah, good. Good to have you.
Say hello again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having Wi-Fi problems today, so
No worries.
forgive me.
Satellite's not lined up for you. I remember specifically
That's usually my response to things, Neil.
because Globebusters didn't come after that incident. When you went on, Globebusters did not have a show on that Sunday, and that's when Ballbusters came in. It was actually outstanding.
What, the first Ballbusters? I'm sure it was terrible. I ran it.
No, the way it started was outstanding.
But yeah, that was me. It was obviously it transitioned to becoming our show run from QE's channel. But originally, I ran Ballbusters, and obviously it was me that was putting the time slots and deciding when it was going to happen. And I created an advert for QE for his channel, and that whole process was to take my subscriber base and get them to subscribe to Quantum Eraser, so that, you know, there's the transition eventually to Ballbusters being ran by QE means he takes the audience that's been built from the back of my channel to his channel, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah, he owes you big time.
Doesn't owe me anything. You can lead a horse to water, but it's the horse doing the drinking, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can get a horse to drink. I told you that before. Feed him salt, and you'll see how thirsty that horse gets.
Sure, but okay, let's drop the horse analogies. The idea of getting a channel going is thwarted for most people by the fact that the initial start, the get going from 0 to 1,000, is the hardest thing you can do. It is really, really hard. However, if you've got a nice, friendly person next to you that's got those 1,000 subscribers already and can just pass them over to you, then life comes a lot easier. You just need to actually convince 1,000 real people to go and actually subscribe. Well, like I say, you get by with a little help from your friends. Well, you know, that's still QE doing the actual work to build his channel. I can't take credit for it besides help standing next to him while we're both trying to roll a tiny little snowball and get it to all stick together. If you've ever made a snowman, you'll know what I'm talking about. Once you get the ball rolling, it doesn't matter what you do. If you push it in any direction, it picks up snow. But initially, when you're trying to get that little tiny bit of snow to turn into a ball to start rolling it, it's almost impossible. You keep picking it up and turning it and pushing it and nothing happens. Very hard. But put a couple of people around you, you increase your chances of that first bit of ball going. But it's always down to the person who's running their own channel to keep the ball rolling faster, to keep people on side, not lose subscribers. That's all equally as difficult. Not lose support from people, things like that.
So you're saying that all the people around them to get the ball rolling, it was like when you were making a snowman. If that snow wasn't compact and it was just dust, that ball wasn't staying together. But if it was compact snow with a little moisture in there, that snowman got built pretty fast once you got the ball rolling.
Yeah, it's just getting the ball rolling that's hard. Now, on my YouTube journey, there's all sorts of obstacles that get put in your way by Congress or YouTube or whoever it is. And again, you have to address each of them as they come, and you have to deal with them appropriately. Every one of them results in just more work. But that's what you've got to do if you're going to try and have even a modicum of success on YouTube. Now, having all that explained to you, you then take your choices, don't you? Do I want to go all in and really put effort into this and keep a time slot? And QE has. He's consistently kept a time slot. He's got a regular show. He's consistently maintaining and building his audience. He's concerned about what his material will be, to the point where he's arguing with me about what I should have covered yesterday, in the nicest possible way. But you know what I mean? He's got a bit of tenacity about maintaining and growing a YouTube channel. That's what you've got to have. I don't know how we got on this subject. We're supposed to be talking about the community of Flat Earth as opposed to my YouTube channel. Or QE. It's because we were praising QE for his progress in the discussion, and I segued pink writing into this discussion, didn't I? So yeah, QE training us all and concerning himself with the standard of understanding that we all must retain to debate these idiots telling us they've got scientific evidence for a globe when it was all a lie. That was the starting point, 12 months of drilling a whole bunch of different people over different fragmented sections of shows in the scientific method, by example, with other opponents claiming they got science and being taken through the process in the pink writing from QE. We all got to witness that. And it educated us. It took time, though. No one picked it up immediately when you compare us to your brother-in-law.
Science.
Say again, Chocolate?
The body of science.
Not anymore.
Nope. I heard some mainstream guy say that the other day, and I just had a whole belly laugh when I heard just that phrase come out of his mouth. Because it just brought back so many memories. I guess we're reminiscing today.
Well, positive for us, not so much for the rest of the community, because that particular that time was the fragmentation of a lot of communities within Flat Earth, because there's a good chunk of them that wanted to use the magical meaning of science to promote their fantastical ideas within Flat Earth. And having someone like me or Quantum Eraser come along and say, actually, pseudoscience is something that isn't comporting to the method. Here's the method. Does what you're claiming comport with that? Nope. Well, therefore, what are you going to do? Well, you'll detach yourself from our company.
Annoyed with us?
Go on.
I'm sorry, Nathan. I was just saying, you mean people got annoyed with us because we actually started distinguishing what is science and what isn't, as opposed to saying, "Oh, this proves flat Earth." It's science. It proves a globe. It's not science. We actually had to establish what is science and what isn't, realizing that flat Earth is not even a scientific category. It's like, yeah, it's. I don't know. Yeah, there was a bit of a split back in the day with that.
That was the split.
Yeah.
It was the thing that destroyed the ballers, but it's the thing that split flat earthers.
Yep.
Which is funny, because you would think the same guys that are running around spouting, well, the body of science, and we got science that proves this, and science proves a ball, science proves R, science proves molten iron core, all of this. And then all of a sudden, for that to change, for the very people that were saying that to now say, "Oh, science doesn't prove anything. Can't use science. Science does." So okay, so what happened to all the science that proved the globe before? And it's like y'all didn't notice that that's what their response was. Like it reminds me of the Black Swan. Like y'all didn't notice that their response has changed. What that doesn't that's not significant to you. Like how is the Black Swan not a relevant argument when literally they used to argue for a physical geometric horizon, and then all of a sudden this argument comes out and oh, we've never argued that. Never, nobody said, all right, the horizon's Earth curve. Like, what? Are
Yeah,
you
they
guys
think we're
not seeing that?
That now
As
happens
a
at
matter of fact, on that note, I heard something that I think QE posted yesterday. Um, that I listened to was Ruhiv talking to a couple of people, and I I want to give Ruhiv props because the guy, whoever he was speaking to, actually asked him to define the horizon. And he starts off with, I'm a glober, so you're not going to like how I define the horizon, blah, blah, blah. And then he actually says it's the edge of the sphere, the physical sphere edge. And I was just like, I was taken aback a second. I was like, wait a minute. We started calling it that, right?
Yep.
And then all the globers would tell us we're crazy. Oh, the Earth doesn't have an edge. The globe doesn't have an edge. And here you got this guy, one of their, I guess, prominent globe debaters, basically saying, yeah, it's the physical sphere edge.
Yeah.
Yes.
For 4 years, I've been saying,
don't have
yeah.
edges.
Since the Black Swan came out, when I heard that in response, Chocolate, my response would be, it's marked with an X and labelled horizon in your begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator. Then I'd bring it up on screen and show them, and they go, you haven't got the advanced maths.
The advanced maps.
And then they
I
throw up
think you
Andrew
made a
Thomas Young.
mistake.
Then
Supposed to say perspective omitting.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Then they'd throw up Andrew Thomas Young and the advanced mathematics of refracted donkey dick horizons. That's how it began. That was how that debate progressed. What I was going to add to that is in 2024, though, Chocolate, that progression, which can let's put it this way, you can put someone the Black Swan argument in 2021 and then find that their rebuttal comes a month later, a week later, an hour later. Do you know what I mean? Later. Yeah, Chocolate? In current debate, doesn't work like that. It goes like this. And this is an actual example of one that's taken place recently. I can prove Earth's a sphere with seismology. Really? Yep. Let's break that down. Excuse me. Globe claimant is suggesting that he proves the ground is a curved ground because of seismology. Okay. Flat Earther comes along and says, the measurements in your seismology require a flat plane of reference. Okay? So, just to summarise again, globe claimant says, I prove globe with this method. Flat Earther says, that method measures a flat Earth. The globe claimant then responds, it's not the ground. I kid you not.
What,
That's
the
where we're
ground
at.
that I was talking about before, that's definitely not the ground. Yes.
Yes.
That checks out.
Yes. We've had other examples of celestial navigation claimants, typically in rebuttal to us, because that's the first point we inadvertently went forward on the front foot. Yeah? We instinctually did it anyway without me having to prompt people. That is to say that our opponents started to come and respond to our positive claim about Earth being measured flat with angles. And then we're debating about whether or not we can get heights off a flat Earth. So you notice how the situation's suddenly taken a 180-degree turnaround. Instead of a globe claimant coming in and telling us how Earth's measured globe-shaped, alternatively, a flat earther telling his audience how globe it isn't, and then you get into the false dichotomy of how Earth is or isn't globe-shaped for whatever reasons being debated. Fast forward to 2024, Earth's measured flat, says the flat earther. Globe claimant says, how do you get height measurements off a flat Earth? Notice how we've now got two situations where both the opponent on the globe side and the flat earth on the front foot claimant are talking about flat earth the whole time. Much better.
Yeah, then
Or
you got
no,
Sorry, Chalker, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, or you get the wonderful, our fan favorite. It's too big, so of course we measure it flat because it's too big to measure the curve.
Of course, it would be inappropriate to measure it spherically.
Well,
So
what
we
do you
measure it
call
flat.
people that say? Then what do you call the other people that say it's their duty to mankind to tell them that Earth is not measured flat?
They think they've got a duty to mankind. I'm saying look out for number one. Of the two, if you stack them up, you could say the flat earther is being quite selfish. He's saying, look out for what you know and you understand, and be respectful of others' beliefs. The globe proponent says, I need to convert the world to what they already believe anyway. Okay, stark contrast.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I
I'm
was gonna
talking to
say. Like,
Bev.
that's a hell of a duty, because people are already taught that. So that you're basically taking up the duty of teaching people what they already supposed to believe.
Yep.
Oh, maybe that's what it is, because it's a.
I would suggest those people teaching others what they already believe to be true should get first punt in the YouTube algorithm. It's only reasonable.
I was more speaking about Bev in chat saying it's his duty to tell the world that he's measured Earth not to be flat. Now, what's the purpose of that, Nathan? Talk about a community. What's
Well, it's
the
useful for
purpose of
us.
that?
Yeah, man, I can get behind that. Check out how Bev shows how not flat the Earth is in its topology with reference to a horizontal plane of reference. Cool.
What's Bev's message, Neil?
That Earth is not measured flat.
Well, he spends his time doing what, you see? He spends his time saying silly things like that, which he can't even substantiate. Bev's purpose is to make Bev famous. Yeah? And he's not bothered how he does it. Whether
His
it's
duty.
ad homing people, attacking people, whatever. His raison d'etre is to make Bev more known.
Yeah, but
Motivation's important.
that's
you know?
also my primary purpose, though, strictly speaking, isn't it?
No, yours is to make a living.
Yeah, by being more well known, I'll make a better living. So that's a standard I've got to find objectionable, really.
Yeah, but you're going to have standards, otherwise, yeah. What's making what's driving your channel is the standards. Yeah, that's why people will subscribe and rewatch the standards. Why are people watching Bev?
I don't know. I'm not.
Well, for the soap opera, mate.
It's for the soap opera.
Ah. For
Okay.
him coming over here and look at his channel. It's a soap opera. He doesn't do anything, doesn't achieve anything other than attack other flat earthers.
Fair enough. Well, more power to him. I couldn't care less.
And that's fine. But that's why he's doing it. He's not doing it to promote flat earth, to try and get any message out, is he?
Like I say, I don't know. I don't watch him.
No, snap anymore. But certainly the impression I've got, there's a difference in motivation and also standards that you'll do to get a subscriber.
I mean, I only hope that people subscribe. Number one, if they haven't subscribed already, I want genuine numbers. And number two, that they're subscribing for the quality of the information that we put out. That is to say, it has a use. It's got a practical application in the debate about the nature of Earth. I'd hope people subscribe for that.
Well, I think Paula had the same problem you had, Adam. She woke up and she had a membership to Bev's that she never purchased.
Yeah.
Weird.
I think mine's expired. I didn't get a renewal for May. I'm not disappointed.
Thought you were about to say I didn't get a refund.
Yeah. So my free subscription's ended.
Fair enough. In any event, we're at the hour mark, but we haven't necessarily covered anything today. We were hoping to just have a chit chat, as you'll find out if you are one of my members and listen to the pre-show discussion. In any event, maybe from the chat, if you'll let me know if you did want us to continue, because I mean, I'm in the mood to carry on live, quite relaxed. Why are you guys on the panel? I know there's only a couple of you.
Keep
Yeah, I'm
rolling,
cool.
baby.
Okay. Well, let us know if you would like us to just keep chit-chatting till it gets a bit stale, and then we'll round out the live show, or alternatively, we can cover a video. So, one, if you want us to carry on chit-chatting as we are, 4 more hours, says Keurig. Yeah, very original. I don't think we'll go for 4 more hours live. In any event, just let us know what you'd like us to do. Carry on chit-chatting as we are, or cover a video. Either way, we'll carry on live for a little bit longer until it gets stale. I don't know if I feel bad about the relationships that get severed over things like the scientific method, because I go in to, it's hard to give these examples without naming names, and that's not my intention here today. I go into the endeavor of educating somebody in the method of science.
Can you guys hear me?
Go on, Adam. Is that chocolate?
It was chocolate. We can hear you, Chop. Not now.
Either way, I'll carry on, see if he pipes up. I go into that endeavor with the joy and delight that I'm going to help somebody arm themselves with a tool that can destroy globe claimants. Because it doesn't matter that in our arena we've wiped out the notion of having all of the body of science behind the notion that we're on a sphere. It isn't. It's a category error. But we occasionally will come across those people and still destroy them because we understand what science is. So when you see how effective a tool it is, I'll get onto the double-edged nature of it in a second. You really want to pass that on to the next man, especially if he's in your field and are friendly. You know, somebody's supported you and you've supported them and so on and so forth. You really want to go, look at this wicked tool I've got. This'll help. And when that results in the person rejecting you and even condemning you, it's hard to not go, oh, that's personally going to affect me. But by the same token, I said at the beginning of this live stream, we've got a very hyper-focused audience as a result of them not that frequently, but fairly infrequently telling me, I've come away from certain videographers to you because you don't deal in Feast of Nonsense and only deal in absolutes. So, you know, there's obviously an advantage to keeping what we do and who views what we do very focused. And therefore, you know, hearing people, I'll give panel examples here just because it's easier. Eli coming back from way yonder talking about flat earth and giving a really good example of how he's gone out there and nailed someone to the wall with one of the debating points that we typically use day in, day out. You know, now there are obviously other examples that aren't off my panel. I'm sure this is maybe my invite to Discord to pipe up in this instance, but we'll see how it goes. But, you know, that's of an advantage. But back to the original point, it's hard not to look at the denial of the method from the person that you were hoping to pass on that tool to. Now, the reason is because it's a double-edged sword. So the scientific method is fantastic for taking the heads off ballers when they claim they've got science for a nonsensical mathematical derivation of a flat earth, because they won't have science, the method that is actually employed to give empirical outcomes. The problem is that a lot of the people who are in flat earth also use that magic trick. That is to say, suggest with the magic words of hypothesis or experiment or just science itself that they've got empirical evidence for that which they're claiming. And when you realise that you've got to relinquish that which you've used throughout your flat earth career, let's call it, to suggest that you're proving your point of a flat earth or anything else within that subject or outside of it, if the case may be, and the standard you've used to claim it is science, suddenly you've got a problem on your hands. You're undermining your own arguments that you've put forth for quite some time. Therefore, it's not worth relinquishing your own claims of science in a recognition of what science actually is. Therefore, driving a rift between certain parts of the community to the point where I've been labelled a scammer for declaring that science proves things, because certain individuals use those words where proof isn't actually in abundance or even possible. but they still say science. So we then present a problem from the other side of the sword that we're offering up to them. And in fairness to me, I've offered it up with a very clear explanation of the double-sided nature of the sword if you are one of those people that's in a position to claim science when you haven't got it as a flat earther. So there we go. There's the full rendition of why that drove a rift in the community however many years ago it is now. Did we get any votes? 2, video. 2, video. People want video. Oh no, there's a couple of ones. Those people want a video. You do that then,
What we
gentlemen? And
We're giving
ladies,
them an
if there are
option.
any.
Or...
Go on. Adam.
I was just saying, have we got an option or is it a pre-selection?
Yeah, you
Annoy Kiri.
can keep chatting. If you want to keep chatting, I'll just keep chatting and then there'll be no opportunity to press play.
That's fair. I didn't know if we had different videos available or what was there. That I think the one that Kill QE, but I've not had a chance to listen to. I think Chocolate alluded to it earlier. Rufy and I think it was David Weiss, isn't it? I don't know if that's a video or something that QE's just pumped out.
I'll scroll through Skype and see if I can find QE's message because I think he put a recording into one of his messages to me. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I thought, is that what Chocolate was? Oh no, that's Moon Visible. I don't know. I've not had a chance to read that. I thought there was one with, it might have been Brian that's posted it then, Rufy and not David Weiss. Was it David Weiss?
I don't know. If you haven't got it queued up, it's not something we can cover. What I have got queued up is a video discussing moon landing proofs from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. I doubt you're familiar with it, Adam.
I've not heard that, but the topic's interesting. As to how we'll deal with it now. I say, I don't necessarily think it's a feast of nonsense topic, stuff like that. I know we poo-poo it. If you're dealing with a newbie, gas pressure. You know what I mean? It'd be interesting to see how these guys cover it. Do we focus on whether or not photographic film works on the moon or...
Yeah, okay. I'm down for looking at this for half an hour. I mean, we'll probably only get through the first 25 seconds of it, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so this video is, as I suggested, titled The Moon Landings, and the videographer is the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. I've just stuck a link in the live stream chat, so please let the videographer know, at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and just allude to the idea that we have covered their video. The idea being that were they to respond to any of the comments that we've made here, they would put a link to our video and help us along in the YouTube algorithmic love that we do not get afforded by YouTube themselves. So yeah, let them know, offer them a view, leave a comment, help them in the YouTube algorithm. Hopefully they do the same for us if they were to respond. And indeed, me saying it several times gives the people who are actually in the live stream now the opportunity to go now by clicking that link and hopefully returning in a couple of minutes after they've left a polite, non-sweary, non-going-to-be-removed immediately comment on one of these videos that we do cover daily when we put their links and help them in the YouTube algorithmic love that we do not receive. Have I said it enough times for people to have gone and done that, do you think? Yes, Nathan, I think you did it too many, actually. Yeah, I think you're right. I probably repeated it one too many times, and people have actually gone and let that videographer know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Maybe they haven't. Who knows? Maybe they'll get back and hear me doing the call to action and be delighted I've said it 5 times. Is that Adam? Go ahead.
I don't know. Let's make a start then. I think there are people who've had a chance to do it.
Now, I'll actually start with ones that we can prove rather than ones that we can't.
We'll be the judge of that.
That's a bold statement to start with, isn't it?
Yeah, well, great start.
Confident.
Just to whiz through a couple. During Prohibition, the US Department of the Treasury poisoned alcohol.
Oh, this isn't going to be in my wheelhouse at all. This might be sort of trivia that Adam would know. Oh, should we spin on?
Well, let's just see what this has got to have some role
And
in conspiracy. I assume.
New York's chief medical examiner personally identified over 1,000 people that had been poisoned by the alcohol. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment. For 40 years, the government claimed to be treating black men for their
Right,
syphilis,
so-
but was actually just watching them and giving them fake medicine just to see what.
Okay, this is quite a contentious. You need Eli and Chocolate and me have discussed this. So this is one of the, just like the experimented on us and our soldiers, it's a particular group of black people where they just let syphilis run riot and fooled them into thinking they were receiving medication so they could examine the epidemiology of syphilis and its spread. It's one of the tensions of black people in America. This
Breaking up, Adam. One more time.
you heard of it?
It came from, and then you broke up. We didn't hear what you said. Can you say it all again?
You can try, yeah. So as far as I'm aware, this is an epidemiological study of no ethics. So there's communities in America that were mostly black, syphilis outbreaks, and they pretended to watch the spread and progression of syphilis within a community. Like major human rights violations, just to...
Okay.
What would happen?
Really? I've
Yeah.
not heard of that one.
You not heard of the Tuskegee? Oh, that was a big one. More than 100 million Americans received a polio vaccine contaminated.
Is this leading to a massive appeal to consensus, or what? What's going on?
Again,
I don't know, because
presumably to see
I
what.
mean, are we listing things that were considered conspiracy at the time, but are now demonstrably true? There's evidence for them,
I don't
like
know,
the syphilis experiment.
I don't know. He's setting the stage, and I'm intrigued.
What happened? The Gulf of Tonkin incident. For years, that was so. This was a sort of an attack that led to the US getting involved in Vietnam, and for years that was a officially denied conspiracy theory. Recently, declassified documents out in 2005 confirmed that actually, it never happened. So it was a
So is this going to be NASA releases of documents? Where's he going?
genuine conspiracy. Oh, this one is mad. Operation Northwards. Yeah, so the Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on.
I think he's just going to get into the moon landing hoax eventually, right? So should we spin past this because it really isn't on topic? What do you reckon, Adam? Or do you want to hear more?
Well, I'm intrigued as to the
I don't know,
load
yes.
of things that were considered
You're breaking up a little bit, so I'll just press play. I'll take that as a yes.
On a plan to commit terrorist
Okay.
acts in America, pin them on Cuba so that they could invade them.
In the early Castro years.
Yeah. And JFK said, yeah, you're not doing that. But the bloody Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on that plan, but they couldn't get it past JFK, presumably because George Bush wasn't in the White House at the time.
Mm.
So, yeah, and again, declassified documents show that. The government using LSD on unwitting citizens to see what happened.
Probably the one most people will be familiar with in these conspiratorial corners of the internet.
MK Ultra, the MK standing for mind control. So that's another one. The Iran Contra scandal. They were selling weapons to Iran to channel money to Nicaraguan militants. Again, denied. If you said anything about that, you were a conspiracy theorist, and then declassified documents have now come out and said, yeah, we did that one.
Now I've got his angle. So his angle is, currently they say moon landing didn't happen. You're called a kook. Will it be the case that in 20 years' time it'll be declassified that the moon landing was a complete sham? Right, that's presumably what he's setting the stage for.
A public relations firm organised a 15-year-old.
Go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say that's what I'm getting. Maybe the list's a little too long, but actually quite pertinent, because all of the citations are to do with the US government.
Kuwaiti girl to
which
make up
is massive.
stories about Iraqi troops dumping babies on the floor in their first invasion, and it then turned.
This is the one that JLB leans on very heavily.
turned out that this was set up by a PR firm. Right, now, all of those that I mentioned, you don't need to worry about them being conspiracy theories. All of those have been admitted to. All of them, we have declassified documents that demonstrate all of those, right?
If you want to see more in a dramatized version of what he's describing, go and find a copy of a film called Wag the Dog.
I know a bit about the last one. So she actually testified they took babies out of incubators and then smashed them on the floor.
Yeah, testified before, I think it might not be Congress, but a similar body. And very dramatic, tear-filled confession about how they stole the incubators, leaving the babies to die on the cold floor. All lies.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that obviously she was, well, a rich child of a Kuwaiti family, so wasn't in Kuwait during any of the invasion, was
Yes.
studying in the United States.
Yeah, it was all
had not been to Kuwait for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? It was transparently stupid that anyone even believed that.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are just the ones that we can say without question because we have the declassified documents that prove it and it's been admitted. There are other ones that haven't been admitted. So, JFK, I know that you've written a lot on that, Bo. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the bloody CIA took him out. I know that's your view, isn't it? What's his name?
Yeah.
RFK, who's running at the moment. I mean, he's just up front that he thinks the CIA killed his dad and his uncle. Nixon, that's one we talked about the CIA's involvement in the downfall of Nixon. I know you have more qualms over that one, but there's
No, it's already gone on a bit too long, Adam. I am going to spin on to
I agree.
the spin on. We'll just spin it on maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
That doesn't follow for me. So I'd say I'm one of those people that do believe men landed on the moon.
Yeah.
Now into it.
So hopefully we'll have a bit of a back and forth about it.
Yeah.
But I think
It's the first problem, mate. You got a belief in it. Yeah.
it's okay to be skeptical though. Because because
Why should it be okay to be skeptical if it's considered mankind's greatest achievement? Should be set in stone. Shouldn't be any ambiguity about it whatsoever.
where I'm like a historic, an armchair amateur historian, fan of history, but particularly ancient history, that's really my forte, is what you're sort of like a detective in a way, dealing with a small amount of evidence, especially in ancient history. You've sometimes only got tiny fragments of evidence, and you have to try and work out what is more or less likely to have been true.
Evidence means proof. That's what evidence is. If you've got evidence of something, then you've got proof of something. That's what it is.
From the evidence. And it's okay.
He's talking historical here, which is a very different standard, which often requires interpretation.
It's just dawned on me as soon as you said it, I'm applying the wrong standard to him here. It's a historical standard. You're absolutely correct. I'll lay off a little bit.
Well, no, because I'm going to wade in. But within all of that, there are still other considerations. So if I've got a historical story, Icarus, for example, I could take that and say, well, realistically, I know you can't flap your arms whether you strap feathers to them or not. Now, the sun side of it, whether it melted and he plunged, is irrelevant because from a historical point of view, those things weren't possible, still aren't possible today, breaks other laws of physics here. In terms of that, so when I then interpret that historical narrative, I've still got to be cognizant of the outlandish claims, and would that be possible? That I think is still applicable to the moon landings. There are certain points that I could be skeptical about, but more fundamentally, I've got to use physics to determine, would it be possible to travel to a place that can't exist? If you only use the historical stuff, you can maintain the narrative. If you bring in other fields of knowledge, then it's not reasonable to accept that.
Okay, well, we'll undermine this entire discussion from the off, right? Outer space, where they claim to travel through to get to the moon, to land on it, is fake. The idea that we have an area of volume 10 to the minus 17 torr, a vacuum, above our high-pressure gas system that we're all breathing is utterly absurd and a violation of a law of nature. Gas fills space. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would have filled it. We'd have no gas to breathe. Ergo, the sky vacuum, claimed to be place they took this journey through, is a second law of thermodynamics violation. Complete lie. They did not travel through high-pressure gas that we breathe into a sky vacuum, traverse it, and then land on a rock claimed to be rock in that sky vacuum. There is no sky vacuum. Space is fake. There was no moon landing. Men have never traversed a moon surface. Whether or not there is one, I don't know. What I do know is there is no area for them to travel through, violating a second law of thermodynamics description of gas dispersion. The sky is not a vacuum. Outer space is fake. There was no journey through it to the moon. There was no moon landing. The moon landing is automatically debunked by that second law of thermodynamics violation area that I have to travel through. Also debunking all claim to be pictures of Earth from space, and all claim to be orbital motions taking place in a mathematical derivation and reification of flat Earth measurements. That would be orbital motion. There isn't orbital motion around a sphere-shaped Earth with things falling around. That isn't the case. That does not happen. There is no men in sky vacuums. There is no trip to the moon.
Paid to be skeptical. So, for example, neither of us were involved in the Apollo program,
That's true.
right?
Yep.
Neither of us are sort of geologists.
What is this? What fallacy is this? I don't know the name of the fallacy for this. It's not appeal to authority.
What did he say? The line just cut on me just as he said.
He's saying we're not geologists. We're not members of NASA.
Yeah.
Appeal to ignorance, is it?
I was thinking appeal to silence. Is it not just appeal to ignorance? Argument from ignorance. Well, I don't know any better.
So, what we can only really say is what is more or less likely to be true.
No. You could prove it demonstrably, rather than you having to, as a third party, assess a probability balance. Why? Why would you in any way, shape or form look at something that is put on video and claimed to be reality and assess it in that manner? It means that, unlike most people we oppose, maybe it's because of his historical standard application, he's going to assess this on the balance of probability? You're talking about your reality. I mean, fair play. This is a very, very off the wall endeavour. From my perspective, I've never seen it considered in this manner. Have you, Adam or Neil or anybody in Discord? Like, so open to the idea, well, they could be lying. Let's just look at it on the balance of probability. What? You're that open to it? Okay.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't say for 100% it happened, and you
Right.
can't say for 100% it didn't happen.
Well, that's not my.
Yeah, I can. No, you can't travel through a sky vacuum. There is no sky vacuum. The gas we're breathing would also be able to travel through it as it expands at a high rate of speed into whatever volume it's got. If there's a volume rockets can go into, the gas would go into it. That's what gas does. It expands into volumes. So there is no empty space, empty volume above our heads for rockets to travel through. It's utterly absurd. I can say 100% it did not happen. He can't. He doesn't know. I do. Someone trying to join or something? Maybe it was chocolate.
Position anyway.
Right,
On 50-50.
okay, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But so the point is, you have to end up coming down unless you actually flew on one of those Apollo missions and set foot on the moon
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, that's a nice setup for the position that we used to have in 2017 put to us. Well, you haven't been up on a rocket if I put you on one. What, to go into a violation of a second law of thermodynamics description of entropic gas dispersion? No, we won't be doing that because gas would be filling it and we'd all be dead.
Not many people did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all liars, by the way. Every one of them that said that they've been into the sky vacuum that doesn't exist. They're all liars. Every single one of them have lied to you and the public when they said that they went to a place that doesn't exist. It didn't exist before they went, and it didn't exist after they started lying about going there.
You can only say what is more or less like the truth. For me, the preponderance of evidence is that we did, but
Really? So for you, based on probability, we did go to Narnia. I mean, based on all the evidence of wardrobes and fur coats, right? No, you can't traverse high-pressure gas that expands in all directions in every single circumstance you can put it in, and then put it next to a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum and say, you stay there, gas. We're off into the area of volume you're not going to expand into in line with a law of nature. No, that's not going to be the case, mate.
Yeah.
You go ahead before I set out my stall. Where I think there is lots of evidence.
Let's talk about some of that because, and the other thing I just note before I get into this, I just find it really interesting the reaction to raising any doubts about this stuff, because people get very angry very quickly, and they almost immediately go to, if you don't believe this, you must be stupid.
Believe. That's the problem again. He said it also, the guy with no hair. Yeah, belief. That's not the problem here. The problem is the standard should be empirical. There should be no doubt in anybody's mind that we went to the moon if we did. Should be. That's why they get angry, because in their mind, that is the standard. There's absolutely no way this should even be questioned, because that's the standard that we expect. Yeah, it's not the standard you got, though. You were lied to by men who claim to be in sky vacuums. That's why they get angry.
The other thing is true, though. If I've had it, well, because I've written articles about space things and I've talked about space things from time to time. You get people in the comments going, "Oh my God, I can't believe you believe in that there's a space station."
There's that word again. You believe it. Why? Because you can't verify it, and you've got to trust in men that are liars. Yeah.
And I can't believe you believe we went to the moon. Of course we didn't.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Did they point out that it's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, or did they just express their belief that it wasn't true? I'm pretty sure from what you've just reiterated about your comments that you read, that they just expressed a disbelief in your belief, as opposed to violating a second law of thermodynamics description of gas expanding into space. What do you know? You think there's a space? No, gas would fill it.
It's like,
but this issue in particular makes people really angry for some reason. I don't know why. And that was like the start of the problem for me, because when I dipped to like 99% certain and I went looking for videos to prove it to me, like I watched all these videos and they were basically just like half-hour, 45-minute videos of people calling you stupid if you don't believe it. And I was watching them thinking, okay,
So what he's describing is I had a slight inkling it might not be true and started doing a bit of digging. And what I came across was the YouTube-promoted shill algorithm that suggests that the people who are questioning it are idiots. So the first thing you got when you questioned it was to be told that anybody questioning it is an idiot by Simon, Dan and Professor Dave. Because that's what you found when you typed the words into the search engine. Yeah.
Second now, he's going to give me the clincher argument.
That's an interesting similarity between flat Earth anti-moon landing people, yeah? As he's just described, the first response is just ad hom. They won't actually deal with it. They can't support their position. So the first way, because if you're right, the first thing you do is tell people why you're right, isn't it? But actually, he's just drawn that analogy there with flat Earth and the moon, that actually the first response of people that disagree with your opinion is to attack the person.
And their lack of faith. You are an idiot if you lack the faith I possess in this subject. I have high degrees of faith. You don't, therefore you are an idiot. What's that, new viewer, coming to see if you were right when you only had a 99% certainty of this? You must be one of the idiots that question it. Right? Quick shout out to Sensual Goat, I think. Sensual Goat. Thanks for reviewing this. It's great channel with interesting guests that cover a range of topics. A channel worth subscribing to, especially for UK politics. Thanks, Nathan. Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for the super chat, Sensual Goat. Apparently, this is a good channel to subscribe to. One of those few times I can actually, and I trust Sensual Goat in that regard, say no. No need to suggest you're not aggressive with them and deter you from doing so. You might actually want to subscribe to this channel, according to Sensual Goat. So check him out, subscribe. He obviously likes them. It's the podcast of the Lotus Eaters is the name of the YouTube channel.
And it's just, there were just like hundreds of videos just saying, if you don't believe it, you're stupid. It's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't work on me.
So beyond the fact that America is guilty of all sorts of, the American government have been, deep state, have been guilty of all sorts of cover-ups and things.
Yeah.
Why don't you think men landed on the moon?
Well, like I said, I'm 50-50. I don't know.
Right.
My position is not that they did. It's just that
this is just, what he started with was to list the type of evidence he's going to consider. And I said it's only historical. Okay, so the only way he's going to come to an opinion is through what it appears to be documents specific to that, not anything like physics that sits outside of it that could destroy it. Doesn't appear that they're prepared to go there. They're only going to use, like I say, that historical narrative.
I like how
Which is what
effective
it's
it was. So there's a slight chance that the moon landing might be fake. I might look into this. Types into Google something referencing moon landing and fakeness. Up comes a whole list of stuff, and he's like, I'm 1% of the inkling that this might be wrong. Hence, I'm looking at it. Lists and lists of stuff that say you're an idiot if you even question this belief that you have in the moon landing. What's your state of play now, mate? 50-50? So you went from, I know that we went to the moon, to, oh, there's a bit of ambiguity. It might not have been 99% certain we did go to the moon, but let's look into it. You're an idiot if you don't believe it. I'll go 50-50. It's like, what next is going to be 10%? Yeah, if you listen to this show, you'll know beyond all doubt, won't you? There's no sky vacuum. Yeah, it's a violation of natural law. They're not travelling through it. You definitely didn't go to the moon. If you didn't know, you do now.
There's sort of interesting question. So obviously the first thing you go to is like, oh well, there's loads of footage, isn't there? Interesting thing about that,
it's from a sky vacuum.
Now obviously, you know, if it's on TV for boomers, that is instantly enough. Like that's all the evidence you need. If it's on TV, it's true, right?
That's a fair point.
Why
Yeah, I agree.
was the footage third hand though? Because you know the footage that was never actually been given out. The way it was done is NASA put the footage up on a projection screen.
So just to pause. So this is what I feared we are going to do. We're going to disprove that photographic paper works in a second law of thermodynamics violation without bothering with the second law of thermodynamics violation. I'm going to have to keep reiterating it, but it is the point. We're going to go through each tiny bit of feast of nonsense stuff, aren't we?
Yeah, I don't mind because it's like nostalgic, isn't it? We've been talking about how things used to be. So now we can draw all of our Narnia comparisons, can't we? Oh, well, there's so many people with the fur coats that go through the wardrobe. There's so much footage of them going through that wardrobe. I mean, have you seen the quantity of Turkish delights that they've brought back from Narnia? Right? I mean, really, we should discuss, and probably will be discussed later in context by comparison, how the gas lamp works in Narnia akin to space. I mean, maybe we could discuss whether or not rockets would work in the sky vacuum. Like, how have they managed to plumb the gas to get to the lamp when you get through the wardrobe in Narnia? I mean, we could discuss this within the context of there definitely being a sky vacuum, aka wardrobe, that we can traverse through the high pressure gas that's just going to stop at the Carmen line. Just chill out, you know, defy gas law, maybe go down, go boom boom, eat too many cakes. Yeah, gas law don't apply to me at the Carmen line. I'm going to chill out here. What's that? Rocket?
Shout out to
See you
the
later,
rebellious
Rocket.
gas
Bye, you off to the
particles.
moon.
Shout out to the rebellious gas particles.
Yeah, those rebellious gas particles eating cake and defying gas law. You go, girls, more power to you. Wave goodbye to those rockets, eat some cake, come back down, go boom boom. What's that? You'd have to reach absolute zero to do so, defying the first law. Yeah, there's a lot of things being defied here, but we're just talking about a bullshit narrative where men who lie claim to be when they punt the idea of travelling to the moon. It's not like any of this is real. It doesn't really matter if it doesn't work. Who cares? People believe it. And you can assess it based on historic standards and probability, whether or not they went through that wardrobe. I mean, through this high-pressure gas we're breathing. We're definitely breathing high-pressure gas, by the way. It's just not expanding into a sky vacuum in violation of natural law, debunking the claim we've been to the moon. We didn't.
Fill the available volume. Not me. I'm going to stay right here.
So Chocolate's quoting a university lecturer from Yale, who's just the way he says it. Fill the available volume. You take a gas, put it in containment, and then you take a volume, and you remove the barrier, and what's going to happen? The gas fills the available volume. Spontaneously, right? Yeah. That's what they teach people. How gas behaves. It fills volumes. It just moves at whatever speed and rate in whatever direction it's traveling until it collides with something. So if it's traveling at a high rate of speed upwards, like all gas does, it's all created at ground level and all expands up and out, then it would continue to do so into your sky vacuum, the one they travelled through to get to the moon. They didn't. They're just liars. You don't know that yet, and you think you need to assess the telly and whether or not you can fake things on telly. Yeah, they can. That goes without saying. All
I think he's about to
things in
address
front of a
that, isn't
TV
he?
camera are
In-
contrived. Go on, Adam.
Oh, look, that was the bit when we paused it. I was going to mention, and I went sideways. But he's going to do what we've mentioned in the past, which again isn't proof. It's just conspiracy, really. You're going to question its validity because of the production quality, is what he's citing here, and more specifically, why even in the 60s you would film a TV screen and then retransmit that filming. So he's got a point. They're all things that make this thing stink, but none of them are going to prove anything to him or anybody else, whether they turn out to be true or not.
The problem is that does it get to a point where it's an overwhelming amount of things that stink, like you say, right? Because way before I was a flat earther, it's the amount of things that stunk about the moon landing, apart from just me looking at the moon saying there's no way people went up there with a car and drove around and played golf, right? To me, that was just always nonsense. Never really believed that. But to a certain amount of people, like it gets to a point where how does every single part of this stink? You know, obviously you're still in Narnia when even talking about it. But like I said, I like tipping my toe into Narnia every once in a while with this.
But
the moon landing.
Chocolate, didn't you hear that English comedian, what he said? When you got doubts about the moon landing, understand that it was rehearsed, and the rehearsals got mixed up with the real footage. So if you see a flag not shaking, it's because it was mixed up with the, fake footage that they did somewhere in the studio.
No, I don't
Yeah,
buy
but
that.
that comedian
No,
named?
no, that's got so many problems because there's no way they could have faked it in advance. It would have cost less to do it for real as a rehearsal and then do it again for the public, according to some of the numpties that speak to us.
You see, the trouble with all of this is even if you get to the conclusion, and he had the NASA documents that cited that it was faked, we still believe we can go to the moon. And that's the question I'm asking this guy. Is it still possible to go to the moon? Whether or not they went in the 60s, in your mind, can you travel there still? That's the difference, I think, still. He's not necessarily destroying the argument at its root, its impossibility. He's just questioning whether or not it was just a nation that made a false claim.
Yeah,
But
that's the point. And
concept is still doable.
Precisely. That's why it's positioned in the way that it is. This is why we're covering it as Feast of Nonsense, even though it's not directly connected to Flat Earth. It's on the table. It's an hors d'oeuvre at the Feast of Nonsense for Flat Earthers. What is that? Well, you want to argue about space. If you've put this discussion point on the table as the opposition, that is to say, you're controlling how the opponent who's going to contradict your ideas and lies about going to the moon, how would you want them to position it? Well, you want to position it so that the rhetoric itself retains its credibility. There is still a space, there is still a sky vacuum, it's just whether or not they lied about the rockets working in the sky vacuum. Or there is still a space, there is still a moon orbiting in it, it's just whether or not the Americans lied to beat the Russians. There is still a moon via a sky vacuum, and there is still definitely a moon landing. We definitely went there, but the bits they showed us weren't the dark side where they were doing the real investigations in space in a sky vacuum. So long as your argumentation doesn't relinquish the base premise of there being a sky vacuum and being an orbital motion and being a sphere, who cares if you believe the Americans lied or not? Right? You still believe the space is true? Good. Yeah, what's that? The Americans lied. Give it enough time, they'll all be dead and no one will care. But you'll still believe the sky vacuum, it's just whether or not those lying sods from the 60s lied about it. Yeah. But you could still go, other than the Van Allen belt, so don't try again. But we could go there if we overcome that little problem. To space. Through the sky vacuum and the gas not filling it in violation of natural law. You still believe in all that crap, yeah? Yeah, bloody lying Americans. That's how it'll go.
But I've been hearing that we're in for a big surprise because they are going to go back and they're all going to laugh in the flat earthers' faces.
Yeah, they've been punting that since the 60s. Yeah, we'll go back. Yeah, we'll go back. Yeah, we'll go back.
We must solve these problems before we can send people to this region of space.
So begging the question premise is space. Before we can solve the problems of going to space, so your focus and concern is on the journey and the problems of the Van Allen belt and all the other crap that they've lied about also. Not about whether or not space is even real. Oh, it goes without saying, of course, there's a sky vacuum above our head and the gas I'm breathing at high pressure not filling it. Of course. Just whether or not we can overcome the Van Allen problems.
Why
Space
you
is still
gotta ruin all
real.
the fun?
No, but you see, that is what they're happy with. You can't control everything you do. But if they can trick you into thinking that you're intelligent, free thinker, wow, and they will be happy. I know QE's going to kill me for saying they, and yeah, but in terms of any controllers of narrative, that's just a bigger win for them, for you to maintain space, but poo-poo the moon landings as just American glitz, yeah, to get out of one-upmanship. You're still reifying space still, yeah? So they don't lose because you're still heliocentric paradigm. You've not challenged this claim at its core.
Yeah, back before we were moving forward and just demonstrating how the Earth was flat, which would currently, for us at least, turn into a segue if we had an opponent come and say, well, no, we went to the moon. Of course we're in an orbital motion. Of course we've got a sky vacuum. And here's the greatest man's achievements to prove it. You go, okay, the telemetry data, where is it? Oh, we don't have any. Oh, that stinks. Well, if we did, but we don't, we could show how it would prove a flat Earth was being measured to give you that data to claim you were travelling into a reified spherical orbit to a moon in a sky vacuum in violation of natural law. That's the summation of this argument. But why would we be doing that when we can just talk about how Earth's measured flat? We can talk about how the maps and models of the globe claim to be reified into an idea to put men in motion around and travel to sky vacuums. First took the Earth being measured flat to create that idea. Far more effective if somebody's unfamiliar with this argument, and if somebody's watched this because they've come from a channel that's only questioning on a 50-50 scale if or maybe if not the globe lie / moon landing lie is or is not true, and they come and listen to us pulling it apart based on second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuums, but inevitably taking it to the flat Earth that must be measured to infer that latitude-based system wrapped and stretched around a globe after taking flat Earth measurements to achieve it. Earth's measured flat for this ludicrous, crazy notion that we've got footage from a sky vacuum. It's utterly absurd.
Telemetry data, which you can then take and re-engineer into saying, oh, you proving a flat Earth with it. Let's just say that we just threw it out and destroyed it. And along with that, let's just destroy the technology that got us there. No, don't worry about it.
I've said it for a while. When I have a certain hat on, I feel like we're here to slowly soften the public up to understanding this stuff because it leaks and permeates and through osmosis reaches people that have a tentative understanding that we're on a globe and numbs them to it. It becomes commonplace, and then eventually it's just accepted as always having been known by everybody after about a generation. But it's things in this context, so things like NASA's release, maybe they'll get to this. We won't in this live show if they don't, but there we go. they've released documents describing how Earth must be a flat plane when they're talking about aviation. That's NASA. Well, freedom of information has given us the ability to see how they actually deal with the world, and they deal with it flat. That's not going to, based on the society that we run and the freedom of information that we have with things like NASA documents, people have applied for them, they've got them, and now they've found out what the reality of their world is. Well, you can't just dump that on everybody. Well, yeah, we kept going the 250, now 300-year-old rhetoric about us being on a globe, and we started to investigate it, and eventually we found that it wasn't the case, and we had to lie through our back teeth from that point to this. Said nobody and will say nobody ever. So you just got to soften the people in the public to it, relinquishing the idea of a globe, that is, or relinquishing the idea of a moon landing at the very least. That's definitely going to be relinquished. It's so garbage and god-awful that people, even normies, are laughing at it now because the standards are so low. Videography's come along such a long way that you can really spot the stop-motion animation that was claimed to be a moon landing. If you can't, you're dumb.
They put a camera on that projection screen, and then that was fed to a monitor, and then all the networks had to basically film from that monitor. So it was like a third-hand signal. So that's part of the reason why the footage quality is so low. It's like, why did they do that? Why have they never handed out the originals? And the interesting thing is the director Ron Howard, he actually went to NASA a few decades ago and said, I want to do a special on this and put it all on the cinemas. I want to edit it all nicely. Give me all the raw footage.
Well, he's the director of Apollo 13, isn't he, Ron Howard?
Yeah. And so he wanted to use loads of the original
Is he
footage.
not
And he went to
also
NASA.
Chachi from Happy Days?
I was going to say that for comedic effect.
Yeah.
He took the momentum. No, he's definitely known for Apollo 13 as opposed to Happy Days.
Said, can I have the original footage? And they said, no, we destroyed it.
All right. Are you just talking about Neil Armstrong of Apollo 11?
No, the moon landings in general. I mean, mainly, but
no,
I mean,
so that's not true. So there's
what is it?
loads of footage, particularly of Apollo 14, 15, 16, and 17. There's hours and hours and hours and hours of footage.
So there's
hours and hours and hours and hours of footage of Aslan jabbering away about the political issues in Narnia. There's hours of it. Hours and hours. Yeah, is that the standard?
There's hours and hours of it.
Right, I just told you they destroyed it.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. We destroyed that evidence of Aslan, but there was hours and hours of the witch and the fawns and stuff. So that's something we can definitely give you that.
You called it earlier with the analogy. How many fur coats can I bring back from the wardrobe, or how much Turkish delight have I returned from Narnia? Yeah, that's what this is. Well, look, there's loads of it, so it has to be true. They're low standards.
Yeah.
The original footage was never given out. It was always done through that process.
Again, so long as we're arguing about whether or not we've got original footage, we're not arguing about whether or not the footage that's been taken could exist from a sky vacuum. It's just whether or not we've got original footage and questioning why we haven't. Well, we haven't because there is no footage from sky vacuums. That's why the deception. Yeah, it's all fake. It's all done on a soundstage. There is no exception. If you're claiming to be in a place that isn't real, you've got to fake it. So they've got to be ambiguous about what they will and won't give you. But you're going to question about why they wouldn't give you footage as opposed to why they'd have to fake being in a sky vacuum. So it works beautifully in their advantage. Just keep debating about whether or not NASA have been a bit tricky with their footage, lied about going to the moon or not, because then you won't question if there's space above your head that gas isn't filling.
Being shown on a monitor.
Okay. I don't know
which
that
the
one.
networks then had to have a third-hand signal. It's like, why did they do that rather than just providing the original footage, and why did they destroy it? I don't get that. The other thing that I find really curious about the footage
Because I've just seen lots and lots of footage from particularly Apollo 15, 16, and 17, where it doesn't look, it's not that ridiculously grainy Apollo 11 style footage. It's not that. It is pretty clear stuff. And again, hours and hours of them driving around in the rovers and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, especially on the later ones, there is more footage available.
So one thing I'll say real quick.
So, okay, there's more footage from the sky vacuum, is there? No.
Yeah, but the
you
moon
can hear him
believer,
trying so hard. Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
The moon believer has now won. Because the standard that the anti-moon believer brought in was, well, the footage quality was so bad. And he went, well, no, there's loads of good quality footage. so the moon landings, by your standards, still exist. The things the non-believer is using of such low standard, which they wouldn't prove or disprove anything either way. I said it could still be original, that footage, couldn't it? Just crap quality. Why NASA asked the news agencies to film a TV screen makes no difference to the second law of thermodynamics, which is where he needs to be. But by his standards now, the guy's just debunked him. Because he said, well, there's only this crap footage, and now he's gone these hours and hours. Well, your arguments fell apart, pal.
Before you go on, is I've got questions about Apollo 9, 10, and 11. Apollo 9 and 10 went to the moon and back, but didn't actually land. And Apollo 11, obviously, the famous moon landing, its first one. I've got all sorts of questions about images and footage. Okay, but Apollo 14, 15, 16, 17, there seems to be no doubt.
You find that a lot more convincing, the later footage.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The BBC version of the Narnia visits was absolutely, thoroughly convincing. So Narnia Expedition 2, 3 and 4, thoroughly... I mean, the footage was crystal clear, the sound quality from Aslan was perfect, and there's tons of it. Hours of them walking through the snow. Have you seen it? There's hours of that snow footage. Have you seen it, Adam? Through Narnia? Have you seen it? There's hours of it.
Witch, which sold it for me.
No, well, they got plenty of White Witch footage, just the Aslan talking footage the first time they went and spoke to Aslan. I mean, obviously he's been killed and resurrected since, but, you know, that's gone missing. But there's loads of snow walking footage in Narnia. Absolutely tons of it. They got the fur coats on and everything. There's tons of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answers to all of this. The other thing I don't know an answer to is obviously AI.
Answer to what? The being footage. Okay.
Fake detection has had a hell of a lot of investment lately because everyone's worried about misinformation and stuff like that. So Google have been spending and other people have been spending billions on software that detects fakes. The interesting thing is when you run the moon landage footage through these fake detections and they've got like a perfect accuracy record, they say it's fake.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I mean, it's obviously going to be the case, and if they failed in that regard, you'd be suspicious of them as a program. They'll just they'll program that out, won't they? They'll just program that out. AI, anyone that questions any moon landing footage, tell them it's real. That's easily fixed.
Right. But again, it doesn't help, does it? Because it's AI. So what's AI's comparison of real moon landing footage that enables it to say that that's fake?
Yeah. How's it coming up with the standard? Exactly. Means nothing. But whether or not AI has got it right about it being fake or not should be the debate, not whether or not you could get footage from a sky vacuum.
I've not seen
it. And they don't just, it's not just like a big fake message comes up on the screen. They give you like almost 200 detailed reasons as to why it's fake. And they go into really granular things that humans would never spot.
Do you
things
think
like,
that AI come up with the reason that it's a second law of thermodynamics violation?
Doubt it. Highly doubt it. Right? One of us will have to plug in a image analyzer AI program with the footage and see what it spits out. But do I care? I mean, I can do that, right? I trained in doing set design and directing, and you know, I've painted the canvases that we use for backdrops. I can spot it a mile away. You know, I know what bloody high wire looks like as well. Yeah? It's like, that's a high wire. They're obviously on wires. That's a green screen. That's a backdrop. That's a set. I don't need bloody AI to tell me.
Even Joe Rogan, who the other day was having a debate with Terrell, as he's defending, or what he called it, he said he was steel manning the position of, you know, obviously the mainstream story of we did go to the moon, right? And he's defending it the whole time. But even while he's defending it, like especially with that particular lunar module that is supposed to gets off the moon to come back to Earth with the one that panels the camera panels up to watch it, he's even laughing at it, saying it looks like it's on a string. Like, what the hell is that? as that is his position to defend. He's simultaneously laughing at it because you just can't help yourself. It just looks so bad. Like, how can you look at
No,
that?
you're missing it. Jimmy Carr said it's a backdrop, it's a green screen, but that's the mix-up they had. They mixed up the real footage with the ones they rehearsed because they wanted it to be perfect. They rehearsed it. When Neil Armstrong came out, what were the first words he was going to say? It was rehearsed. So they got the bad footage.
Intensity and color patterns and distribution stuff like that it tells you that it's from an electric light, not the sun, and a whole bunch of stuff. And you can put in other, and it's not just because it's filmed on the moon, because you can put in other footage from unmanned vehicles that have gone there, like the NASA's lunar rovers and Martian rovers and stuff like that, and it says, yeah, that's true.
Right.
When you put in the landing one.
So, yeah, again, this is the standard you want to lay down. He says grainy footage from moon landing. I respond, no, later footage is much clearer. He says AI says moon landing is fake. He responds to himself. But they also analyse what pictures from Greenland, coloured in orange, and it's definitely lit by the sun. Therefore real. What, real footage of a real landscape? Compared to what? The other moon landing that was independently covering it so we could compare and contrast with that? Oh, no, we're comparing it to the independent Mars study so we can see if it's definitely our lighting in Mars in a sky vacuum in orbit that definitely exists when we study whether or not the lights on Mars will compare correctly. You can't go to Mars. You can't go to the moon. There is no sky vacuum. This is all bollocks.
Ones where humans went there, it says it's fake, and it gives you loads and loads of complex reasons as to why it's fake. And I don't know why that. And maybe there's an innocent explanation for all of these things. Why they destroyed the footage, why they put it up on a monitor and did it third hand and didn't hand out the originals, and why the AI says. I just don't know what the reasons are. So I think those are questions. The other thing.
Yeah, that's what we relinquish as well as flat earthers when we realise that they're lying. No, they're not questions that I'd go to NASA and ask, because you know what they'd do? They'd lie. That's what they do. That's what liars do. Oh, what's that? You caught me in a lie? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to offer you a new lie.
And they're calling you stupid in the process.
Yeah.
Because they think you're going to believe them.
Yeah, when they do it, they have utter contempt for you because you've caught them out in their lie. So they basically despise you.
I think
I've not heard. Aldrin, they punch you in the face.
Yeah. They have so much contempt that they're prepared to bestow physical violence on you in the case of Buzz Aldrin. And Michael Collins. Was it Michael Collins, the one that kneed Bart Sibrel in the groin?
When he was asking him to swear on the Bible?
I think.
Yeah, in Astronauts Gone Wild. The point isn't that. The point is, although it's moon landing stuff, isn't it? Should really give Bart Sibrel a bit of a shout. Although, again, we undermine his entire premise. His premise is that they faked moon landing footage. It wasn't taken from where they said it was. They were definitely in orbit, though. They just weren't as far as they say. No, they weren't in orbit beyond the yummy, yummy gas pressure looking back on Earth. They can't look back on yummy, yummy gas pressure from a sky vacuum. It would be filling the space.
That's entirely new to me, this AI.
Yeah, the AI thing is definitely new. That's fairly recent. The other thing that people always say is, oh, you're stupid if you don't believe it, because there's reflectors on the moon that you can ping and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, I've got it. I've got my solid evidence as to why it's definitely true. So I looked into that, and it then turns out that actually the Chinese, the Indians, and the Russians all have reflectors on the moon.
Yeah.
No, they were reflecting stuff, allegedly reflecting stuff off the moon prior to it having anything on.
Yeah,
and the distances,
exactly.
The distances.
Yeah, right. Where do you get that one from?
Well, the calculations for the distances are taken from flat plane measurements of an R value and then inference of a sphere radial value, so that you can put the sphere radial value into effect in Kepler's third law of orbital motion, scaled with Huygens' use of the same R value measured off a flat plane to Venus, so that you can make this assumption. Go on, Neil.
So you're saying that you're going to need a flat Earth for the moon landing?
Yes. Well, you'll need a flat Earth to infer that you've got measurements that could lead to a moon landing, But the whole thing is undone by the fact that the measurements of a flat plane that we dwell atop, the Earth being flat and measured as such, is then moved forward into a model of a world that is sphere-shaped. And then
But wait,
that
how did they
model is
get-
the world of
how did they
Narnia.
get
I'm
the
answering you, Neil.
measurements?
Why are you yammering? I literally definitely didn't take breath. I'm answering you.
Okay, sorry.
I'm
I
answering
got a
you.
follow-up question after you're done.
That's the follow-up right in the middle of the first answer, I would. Go on.
They had to know where they were going to get to the moon, right? So how did they get them measurements to get to the moon? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not going to
that's
go to
explained.
the moon. But you can suggest that if you measure Earth as a flat plane of reference, you can create the coordinate system to traverse wardrobes with. Doesn't mean you're traversing wardrobes with the flat measurements and the coordinate system you developed for Narnia travel.
Nathan, when you play, could you go back like 10 seconds? I want to hear who else did he say?
I've
The
got my
Chinese, the
solid
Russians, who else got
evidence
reflectors?
as to why it's definitely true.
India.
So I looked into that, and it then turns out that actually the Chinese, the Indians, and the Russians all have reflectors on the moon.
Do they really?
Can India just go there?
Did you not see
No.
the Bollywood Superman dancing on the moon in celebration?
So how did they have reflectors on there?
I thought
Is it-
Bollywood Spider-Man.
No, Bollywood Superman.
They just
Or the
landed.
Chinese don't.
Yeah, they just landed them there. So the reflectors tells you that you got a vessel there. It doesn't tell you that you landed humans.
I mean, they only get a tiny little return signal. From what I understand, there's some dude in India standing at a communication centre, and he looks at his computer. They do have an audio signal in case he goes to the bog or something, so he might be, sat having a poo, and he'll hear ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ding-a-ling, and he knows he's got a return signal.
Oh,
Which is
shoot.
interesting. So there's that one.
That was
So-
proper. You linked it with Muslims.
As I
that
understand
time.
it, there's been all sorts of reflectors put on the moon. Right now, 6 still operate. 3
Yeah, something like that.
3 American ones, 2 Russians, and a Chinese.
Yeah.
An Indian one.
Yeah.
And one of the or 2 of the 3 American ones, I believe, were Apollo era ones. I think
Right.
the Apollo 11 one.
So yeah, the claimed distance that they measured with these return signals has light speed and distance derived from those measurements. That's where I was going when Neil interrupted. So to suggest that you've got a return signal that was acquirable before anybody claimed to go to the moon, they were still doing the same thing. You've got to derive heliocentric distances and timings with light speed, also part of a heliocentric rhetoric. So in other words, you've got control of the time, you've got control of the yardstick when you take these measurements. That's the point. Now, if you are to infer that you can get a return signal from the moon if you bounce something off it, okay, I'll accept that. Then you say, well, I know the distance to the moon because I've laid out the ruler and the scale. No, you have not.
So what you're
Just
saying?
now, was he talking about the amount of reflectors or the amount of still working supposed rovers
It's just
on the
affirming.
moon or Mars?
If it was in our debate, it would be an affirming the consequent. It's still an affirming the consequent. It just doesn't prove Earth's a sphere. It proves moon landings. If moon landing reflect a signal, then moon landing. It's the same affirming the consequent used by Brian Cox and had to be explained to him after a rough night on the way to one of these stations that get a return signal from the alleged reflectors. And the producers having to explain to Brian Cox, you need to explain to the audience that of course we went to the moon because we get a return signal from the reflectors. Ergo confirming to everyone that we definitely went.
Even though they were supposedly reflecting before they went to the moon anyway, so that doesn't prove shit. But
Yeah, it doesn't
I
prove
just want to
anything
know:
because
was he talking about the rovers that are supposedly still on the moon?
just talking about
If you could
retro
rewind
reflectors.
like a few seconds, please.
Just retro reflectors. You want me to go back, yeah?
6 still
little bit, yeah,
operate.
please.
3
Yeah, something like that.
3 American ones, 2 Russians, and a Chinese.
Yeah.
An Indian one.
Yeah.
And one of the or two of the three American ones, I believe, were Apollo era ones. I think
Right.
the Apollo 11 one. So what you're saying, that's not...
Well, I'm just saying
What
that
are you saying?
if other countries have reflectors up there and they do not make the claim that they landed humans,
Right.
that makes me think, oh well, did the first ones land humans as well?
See, not whether or not you can go through a sky vacuum, whether or not the Americans lied about the human aspect of going to the moon, that you can definitely still do because other countries have been there and put reflectors on them. No, you could get a return signal before anybody was even claimed to go from the moon. Now, whether or not it's from the moon at all could just be from the sky for all I know. I've not done it. But the timings are based in heliocentric motion and orbital motion and Keplerian derivations and light speed, all heliocentric. You've got complete control of the scale and the ruler.
Because the reflectors clearly don't tell you.
Before Normie, that's just another discrepancy you can put on the list. I know about that list.
Meanwhile, we know how orbital motions derive from measurements of a flat Earth. So we can point out how there's a connection to the way the Earth actually is measured and derived and lived on for you to make these crazy, outlandish and outrageous claims of nonsensical orbital motion derived from reification of flat Earth measurements when put into a spherical coordinate system after measuring a flat Earth coordinate system of latitude. That's all this is. This la-la-la nonsense about whether or not men have gone to this place they call the moon that's apparently a location because they need to convince everybody that there's soil in the sky. That's the only real purpose. We used to find land out towards the horizon. We call them the New Worlds. Now we are told there's soil in the sky, and whether or not we went to it.
You that they landed humans. It only tells you that they landed something.
I suppose, but I think it's quite well documented. I think it was Apollo 14 or Apollo 12, but certainly Apollo 11, they put a reflector down. And again, it's documented the footage of them putting it down and placing it and stuff.
Yeah.
So...
But I mean, they could have landed that previously and...
Yeah, I mean, they could, I suppose. But again, it gets to the preponderance of what's more likely.
Yes.
It becomes it becomes...
So is it likely you can travel through a thermodynamics violation
No.
or not? They're pondering whether or not these things were there before or after men landed. They're still in the paradigm that this is possible. They've not used that evidence. Like I said, they're sticking with the historical evidence and not using anything else to form their opinion, i.e. physics.
There's more...
One more time, I started the video.
I said, or natural law in this case, which is what we're
but at this point, they're not asking about the physics. They're already well deep into the paradigm, right? So they're not trying to debunk anything as far as is the Earth a globe or is the moon somewhere you can actually go? They're not anywhere near that.
Nope, nowhere near. And that's what we are the remedy to. So, as always, I'll do a little shout out and call to action while we've got a live stream. We are still streaming live. We've obviously got well into this, and I've just noticed that we're 2 hours into this live stream now. So, am I okay to carry on, Paula? My wife's just walked in. Good timing. Up to me. Happy days. Yeah, I'm having fun. Okay, I'm going to post a link to this videographer. So, as always, you can let them know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Where's my paste button? The idea being that this videographer, were they to make a response, would hopefully do the same thing for us and put a link to our video when we point out that there is no second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum above our head to travel to Narnia through. I mean space. A volume that the gas would be filling if it was real. Because they are obviously so unaware of this that they are contemplating the hows and whys of definitely travelling to the moon to put retro reflectors on and whether or not we've got a liar in the American midst. For whatever reason they may be lying. Let's discuss that perhaps next. Either way, please let the videographer know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. I'm sure they'll be intrigued to hear a very different spin on how they have critiqued the moon landings. Because our version of it just undermines it at its root. Which is to say that there is no area above our head, 10 to the minus 17 torr, that gas is not filling.
No, my point more is that therefore the reflector argument is not conclusive proof because clearly if other nations can land reflectors without landing people, then presumably the Americans have that ability as well.
So it's again. So he's great for you as a fundy that believes in space and globes and moon landings, because you've just overcome the Americans aspect of it for the American moon landing in isolation. But there's definitely others. We've affirmed our bias that it's still possible to go to the moon as an overall premise.
Well
called, Adam.
So I didn't find that good. The other thing I thought too, okay, rocks.
Yeah.
Lunar rocks.
Yeah,
that has to be solid, right?
Yeah.
Couple of interesting stories on that. One, Neil Armstrong personally presented a lump of lunar rock to the, I think it was the Dutch Prime Minister.
I've heard this.
And more recently, they got curious and they put it under a microscope, and it turned out it was petrified wood. So that's just one example. Maybe it's only the Dutch Prime Minister, so maybe he doesn't warrant a proper bit of rock. The other thing that I found really interesting.
This is all neutral outcome, because the best you can agree is, well, probably in the past there were trees on the moon. This is not evidence. Whether or not the Americans gave a crap gift doesn't prove anything. But he's still postulating that the thing came from the moon. Whether or not they bothered to give him a real bit of moon rock, because it's quite expensive, is not in debate. Yeah, whether you could get moon rock is not in debate. It's whether or not the Americans are cheap gits.
Oh, Jardo's tempting my audience with free memberships. He says, "Hi, nice to listen live once in the UK. Hi, all memberships coming in 10. I think that's what he means. Jardo tends to give people memberships. Thank you for the super chat.
Did you know that Eva, was it Braun, the Nazi scientist they had?
Werner von Braun.
Werner von Braun, yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently back then in the 60s, you just had a Nazi on hand for whatever reason, but you had a Nazi in your...
The greatest rocket expert in the world.
Yes. Did you know that he took a holiday 6 weeks before the 1969 landings? 6 weeks before.
Do you want to call it, or shall I, Adam, another neutral outcome discussion? Werner von Braun and his activities within NASA. Okay, father of rocketry. In this respect, he's key. He's very influential in terms of the claim to be trip to the moon. Okay, what we're going to look at is bloody gravestone. What is it? Psalms 1 or Psalms 11, something like that. 9. What's the inscription on his tombstone?
It's the majesty of the heavens proclaim, isn't it? Or which is...
Yeah, the heaven showeth his handiwork. But what's the actual number?
I don't know.
Neil? Well, that's inscribed on Werner von Braun's tomb.
19:1 or something like that.
19:1, yeah, something like that. But either way, so what? Does that mean what? That he knew that there was a God? It means nothing. The fact that there were liars within NASA, one of them, you could argue, is Werner von Braun claiming to send people to a sky vacuum, but you could equally argue that he was compartmentalized out of knowing that the sky was not a vacuum and he had genuine aspirations of reaching it. I don't know either way, and he's dead. But this is very much a neutral outcome. It doesn't address the reality of travelling through wardrobes to sky vacuums.
All the landings, he decided to take a holiday.
I mixed my metaphors there. Travelling through high-pressure gas to sky vacuums or wardrobes to Narnia. Sorry to mix my metaphors.
Do you know where he went?
Shout out to Jardo for gifting a whole bunch of memberships. So, Make God Great Again, Bible U, Larry Miles, James Mason, Wondering Gunny Bear. What a name. It's not a woodworking Gunny Bear, even better. Sorry, I'm misreading you. Paul Snell, sorry. A whole bunch of people getting free memberships. Thank you very much indeed to Jardo.
No.
Antarctica.
Right.
His holiday.
Okay.
Which just so happens to be the best location on Earth to collect lunar meteorites.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I don't know why he did that. I mean, presumably the beaches.
Of course, there's me questioning this narrative. We know they're rocks from the moon because we only get rocks from the moon from Antarctica. And we compared the rocks from the moon to the rocks in Antarctica that could only have come from the moon. And we know that they're from the moon because they're the same as the ones that came from the moon when we compared them to the ones in Antarctica. I mean, obviously, we only get moon rocks from the moon unless they fell in Antarctica. Then they're moon rocks that fell in Antarctica. They're still moon rocks.
Which is a fantastic...
So the thing about the rock rocks is that they brought back something in the order of 800 pounds of rocks.
Yeah.
Like Apollo 17 alone brought back 240, 250 pounds of rocks. There's loads of moon rocks. If they gave the Dutch Prime Minister a dodgy one, I can't explain that. I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say, and again, I'm not like a geologist or a chemist or anything, but I think it's fair to say that putting all these rocks by all sorts of different places, not just NASA, saying we've tested it, we've done analysis on it, and just believe us, they're definitely extraterrestrial rocks. I think it is the case that it's documented that other...
That is fair. I mean, there is a whole bunch of documentation that proves that those Turkish delights could have only been made in Narnia. I mean, there's no other Turkish delights like them. And there's a whole bunch of them that they brought back. I mean, I think they brought back 7 pallets of those Turkish delights. All of them have been analysed. Every last one of them.
That's one of my favorite parts of this nonsensical story is that these guys went to the moon and collected, what did he say, 800 pounds of rocks and put it in that lunar module and took off with it back to the Earth with 800 pounds of rocks. Sure they did.
They didn't travel through a sky vacuum. We'd all be dead. The gas would be filling the space. We'd have never developed gas pressure. There'd be nothing for the gas that escaped from the ground to press on. It'd just go into an area, 10 to the minus 17 tour, and never return. As would every other gas particle that was ever developed by a globe in a heliocentric world that's been developed from flat Earth measurements. It's a nonsense story that is not real.
But you
countries and other people have done analysis on these rocks, and they're shown to not be terrestrial.
I'm sure they're real
in
lunar
origin.
rocks, but you do every so often get lunar rocks landing on Earth, and apparently Antarctica is the place to get them.
But like 800 pounds of them.
I have no idea how many.
Again, totally legit. There's no way you'd round up 800 pounds of lunar rocks from Antarctica, like the Antarctic lunar rocks. That's just too many. I mean, it'd be easier to farm them from the moon, really, wouldn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah. Go to the moon and get them and bring them back, as opposed to just get the ones that obviously came here from the moon that you can find laying around the ground in Antarctica. It's
in fact,
great.
I'd go one step further and say it would be far, far more expensive and difficult to pretend to go to Antarctica to collect moon rocks from Antarctica. I mean, it'd be cheaper to just go to the moon.
Yep.
Many
that checks out.
Accumulate there. The reason you go to Antarctica apparently is because it's very white and it hardly ever snows.
See them.
So it stands out like a mile. So they can accumulate there over decades, and then you can just go along and scoop up, I don't know, 800 pounds worth or whatever. However,
Doesn't really make sense to me. There's a difference between sort of meteorites and actual lunar regolith.
Yeah, and maybe these tests.
I don't think lunar regolith just.
Again, it's not just so much a neutral outcome. This is the idea that there is soil coming from the sky. Right, let's get that absolutely clear. There is no soil in the sky. There is no soil coming from the sky. The sky doesn't have the soil. The soil, this is going to shock some globe believers, I know. The soil's on the ground. That's where we found more of it. Shocking, isn't it? Some of you might live on it. Identify it as a new world. That's how we used to expand how much soil we had. When we used to traverse the flat earth that we measured, those same measurements developing into a globe that now leads you to believe that the soil all comes from the sky. We can go get 800 pounds of the stuff from the sky. You think they're getting rocks from the sky? I mean, there's no one else here. I absurd this stupid narrative that these guys are going, oh, yeah. Well, whether or not they went and got 800 pounds of rocks from the moon. You think you can get 800 pounds of rocks from the sky? No one else picking up how stupid this is. What the Western world have now got as a standard of belief. You think you can get rocks from the sky? No, you can't. They're on the ground. I'm living in Laos. What a weird time we live in.
Falls on Antarctica regularly.
I don't know. So maybe that would be the clincher argument as to why it definitely happened. I don't know, but I just think it's an interesting choice for a holiday 6 weeks before the landing. I don't know why that is, but yeah, maybe that is in itself the solid argument that I'm looking for.
maybe every little bit of predictive programming they put in movies that tells you that the moon landing was faked and isn't real and you just need to accept it as a joke also leads you immediately down the garden path of contemplating what might be in Antarctica. Now, I don't know why this is on the Feast of Nonsense table, beyond the let's look at an area that there's a lot of speculation about because then it's shrouded in ambiguity, rather than look at the new worlds we found when travelling out towards the horizon in our recent history when we were traversing a flat world to do so. Because you know what they called that area prior to them finding the new worlds? This will shock you. They used to call the area out towards the horizon, undiscovered territories, space! And you know what they found there? Not just 800 pounds of soil, they found entire new worlds. And then they stopped and started telling you that soil comes from the sky and that they've been there. Yeah. Meanwhile, your mortgage is going up quite rapidly, isn't it? Well, they're not making any more land. And there's scraps in the sky that we might be able to attain, maybe 800 grams or something for you. It'll be very expensive. It might turn out to be wood. But nevertheless, definitely no more land to be found out towards the horizon. No. Definitely not. Even if we were to end up on a flat Earth, if the controlled opposition narrative was to have its way, we'd be surrounded by a giant ice wall, and the flat earthers all agree. We all agree, don't we? We're definitely contained in an ice wall. No need to look, you'll just find death. Yeah? Really? So the whole past history of finding new lands as we traversed out towards the horizon away from Polaris isn't what we should be doing now. We should stop. I wonder why this narrative's punted into this story about travelling to the moon. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, if you haven't got a control structure that's telling people that there is no more land, the new lands are out in the sky, as absurd as that seems to me now as a flat earther, utterly absurd, what an outrageous claim that's never been justified beyond this crap that you debate about probabilities of. Meanwhile, no, if you were to go out and find where we previously found new lands and colonised, you won't find any, there's just an ice wall anyway. Is there? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe the past history of actually finding new worlds in space, with those new worlds in space being the new worlds that people now still call new worlds, would just continue if we carried on looking. Of course, our land value wouldn't continue to rise exponentially every single year if there was just more land to find. So it might be quite convenient to say that there isn't any, and if you just carry on going, you just come back on yourself. Don't check. We'll tie up all the flight paths and give you the roads that you can fly along. But don't look. And if you did, there's probably just a giant ice wall, even if it was flat, how we measure it and that. You won't be able to go beyond that. So just, let's contemplate why Werner von Braun went down there when he said he was going to space. Because that's how we want this discussion to carry on. No. History has shown us that we found new worlds travelling out towards the horizon, formerly known as space. Now space is a sky vacuum where nobody's going, but apparently we can get bloody rocks from. That's the world we've been deceived into. Why? Probably as Math Powerland first suggested. For land! Because that's where we used to find it, now it's up in the sky. Totally absurd.
Don't know. The other thing is...
question on this claim. Who or what is on the moon throwing rocks at the Earth?
I think you'd have to have a moon in an orbital motion claimed to be physical.
I'm staying in their paradigm. They've got 1/6 their gravity. How are rocks getting from the moon to the Earth? Even if they do all like to congregate in Antarctica, who's throwing rocks off the moon at the Earth?
I can rattle off a story if you like.
Oh, please.
Oh, okay, about 1,000 years ago, like before documentation of moon stuff, one of the craters, let's say Aristarchus, was smashed into. Let's make it 5,000 years, just so we've absolutely got no chance of ever verifying this. So 5,000 years ago, the crater known as Aristarchus was created by an impact. Now, it was an ideal impact that happened to come in at the orbital angle that avoided Earth and hit the face that's facing us, right? So we can see it now. Yeah, I mean, do you deny that there's Aristarchus? Obviously not. Therefore, this story is true. In so doing, the impact ejected a certain amount into the lesser gravity of Moon, and that lesser gravity had, for a time, the debris of the Moon orbiting around the Moon as it orbited around us. But over time, the strength of the Earth's gravitational force, that's not a force that's actually bent space-time, caused a warping to inevitably lead to the demise of the orbital path in the weak orbit of the moon and be taken over by Earth's orbit. And that trajectory happened to be directly below where and the Antarctic Peninsula was in that particular time frame. So therefore, over time, the less and less rocks have fallen, but obviously there's a mass of them from that entire Aristarchus debris. I mean, that is true, 100% true, because I made it up myself.
Highly plausible.
Absolutely,
I'm
and works
convinced.
entirely within the heliocentric paradigm and bent space-time, fourth dimensional no less.
I'm so convinced I'm off to a place I can't go to go and get some moon rocks.
I mean, it'd be cheaper to disprove it than to just accept it on pure faith and belief alone. I mean, I've just invented it on the spot and it works. I mean, back in the day, we could laugh about when they didn't know this to be true. The scientists and that. Now they do. We understand where those moon rocks came from and how it absolutely validates the moon landings from the moon. Obviously.
People always say is how could you possibly keep it quiet? Because it's a big project. Surely somebody would have stuck their hand up and said this is a bit suspect.
Yeah, who cares? Again, I'm not on topic today in terms of fallacy use. What fallacy is that? Consensus? Is it appeal to consensus? Somebody would have said something. Argument from silence. That's what it is. It's an argument from silence fallacy. If nobody's putting their hand up, then it can't not be true. Yeah? Yes, Nathan, it's definitely an argument from silence fallacy. Oh, well, I'm pleased to hear it. Took me a while to get there.
And again, I thought that's a good argument. But I've worked on big projects for big companies. You normally only have a small handful of people who are aware of the big picture. Normally, everybody just does their silo thing. There's a team.
Give props to this guy where props are due, right? Absolutely. Yeah, credit where it's due. So you've understand the problem with this compartmentalization argument, which is where this typically went in 2015. No offense to you. So, yeah, one hand doesn't necessarily know what the other hand is doing. Okay, yeah, that's a reasonable argument. And based on that, we can now declare without question that the people who claim to be in a sky vacuum, that's astronauts, are liars. They're not like misunderstanding that they're not in a sky vacuum. Like me, if I tell you that I've been to Narnia, I did go through the wardrobe. The moment you know beyond doubt that there is no wardrobe and there is no Narnia, you know that me saying I've been there, there's no question about it. I'm a liar if I've said I've been to Narnia. Ergo, the men who say they've been to the second law of thermodynamics violation area of volume the gas is not filling in violation of said second law of thermodynamics are automatically liars. All of them.
And if you step to me and you have a problem with it, I'll punch you in the mouth because I'm a hero. That's what heroes do. Buzz.
Sure. But based on his logic, that's why we can call the astronauts liars.
Team that works on a particular bit, right? And I would imagine.
And by contrast, we wouldn't deem the 7 million squillion employees of NASA and all collected derivatives of it liars either, because we can't ascribe motivation to those people. And by his standards, the compartmentalization aspect of it would mean that there's plenty of people that could be precluded of the bigger picture, as he put it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why you got your props. Doesn't alter our argument in terms of there being a second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum, to send, I don't know, some instrument that some guy at NASA's creating. I'm sure he's an excellent engineer and has created a very cool whiz bang gizmo to do whatever he's created. I don't deny that for a second. It doesn't mean he's privy to the idea and notion that there's an area of volume that gas isn't filling, that they definitely won't be sending that gadget to. He just produces the gadget and has done a good job for NASA, gets paid, and off he goes and does his work. In fact, for those people, I do have quite a high degree of empathy. This could ruin a whole load of people's bullshit jobs. I'm sorry, it's bullshit jobs. That's not my fault, though. Yeah?
If there was a bit of tomfoolery going on here, they wouldn't have held an all-hands meeting and said, look, guys, this is what's going on. there would have been people who were diligently working on their bit of the project, and only a small number of people would have actually seen it in totality, would have seen it all pulled together.
If the whole thing is a hoax, though, it will be in the interests of the Russians, if nobody else, to expose it as such.
Oh, I'm coming to that one. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm coming to that one. And just while we're talking about people blowing the whistle on this, of course, there have been people who have blown the whistle on this, but they've been sort of sidelined or not listened to. I mean, one example is Eugene Akers, who was head of security at Cannon Air Force Base. And he said that that's where it was filmed. He gave a deathbed confession saying that this is where it was filmed. So there have been people who have come out, but they just don't get any sort of coverage. So that's in.
Again, easily overcome by any fundy that wants to attack the individual, attack their credibility. And it is just that. It's their individual account. Rather than something that undermines the base premise that the area of volume above our head called the sky vacuum is somewhere that you could traverse. The moment you prove it isn't, that obviously necessitates all of the fakery. It justifies it, it explains it. Why would they need to fake it? Because you can't go to a sky vacuum. That's it. That's the reason.
Interesting. The other thing that people say,
he's looking at where they'd faked it based on a deathbed confession. How much that may or may not legitimise it. To me, Adam, I don't know if you agree, if you're still here. That's still neutral outcome, isn't it?
Yeah, because we've not dealt with the underlying problem, which is, can you go to the moon? We're just saying that's not even on the table, that discussion. Whether, like I said, the reflectors and everything have demonstrated that in his mind, traveling to the moon through a space vacuum next to a pressurized system with no containment is not even in his head, and in terms of consideration. The only consideration is the validity of things like this. This is a deathbed confession. But we're still at the basic premise of we can go to the moon still. Whether or not the Americans are liars is the question on the table.
Yeah, at this stage, you get the conclusion, okay, so deathbed confession, the Americans definitely lied about going, and I don't know how they got their reflector up there, but all the other reflectors prove that people have traversed sky vacuums to get to rocks in the sky that we've bought rocks back from.
Good afternoon, y'all.
Hey.
Hey, real quick, I wanted to say, besides the fact of what you're talking about, the second law of thermodynamics, Nathan, but we also know, even if you want to just throw in the extra stuff that may not be as substantiated evidence besides the second law of thermodynamics, but we know there was an incentive, a political incentive for them to fake it, and we knew they knew how to fake it, and that they had motive to fake it through the political battle they were going through with international ruling or New World Order, whatever you want to call it. But the fact that the bleepers showed how they faked it, because these were actually pilots. They were legitimate pilots, and they knew how to go at a certain altitude and to hover at a certain altitude like any plane, and then do what they did with the window. All of the things that, there's so many different things that's subsidiary to the fact that they can't break the second law of thermodynamics and go through the vacuum. But everything else is evident and substantiated that they faked it. They had motive to fake it. They had an incentive to fake it.
Okay.
So
do you
there's no
remember
going
that?
around it.
In recent history, there was a woman with a deep, commanding voice that pretended to have a wonder drug diagnosis process that could just jab you a bit of blood and diagnose you on the spot. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
No.
Really? God, I
Was
thought-
she American or?
Yeah, some blonde-haired American woman. Chat, please help educate my panel. You'll tell me the name of the company. She's recently been done for fraud because she just faked the whole thing and pretended and sent off on-the-spot blood samples that she'd get from participants that wanted demonstrations to an actual machine that did full analysis on the spot with a huge amount of manpower going into doing it so she could pretend they could do it. And she got billions in investments, right?
She faked it?
She just faked it. She just faked the whole thing. It didn't really exist. There was no wonder process for instant diagnosis with a drop of blood. It was a complete fraud, right? And she just blagged it the whole time. and pretended that there was this thing that didn't exist. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, let's see if my chat's told me who it is. Not yet. We'll get there. A slight delay on the live stream chat, but we'll get there. Hopefully,
I faked it a couple of times.
Pardon?
Is this that Elizabeth Holmes woman?
I
Yeah,
faked it a couple of times.
Right, somebody's got it from the Discord server. Right, so you know who we're talking about.
Elizabeth Holmes is what he said.
Yeah, this is the person we're talking about. The point is, if you want, have you just looked it up? Okay, look, everyone just chill out. We know who it is now, hopefully. If you're an audience member, you've twigged on already. Okay. Anyway, the company started with THI, I think, says Bible U. Man, I thought everybody would know who I was referencing. In any event, at the point that you start questioning, why did she give her really great motivational speech? Why did they have all the machines in the foyer? Why did they throw the parties for the wonder drug? Why did this and that and the other? Why was she involved with all of these pharmaceutical experts? Why did they do this testing then? It's like, it did not exist. You're now looking at the motivation for why someone would have to fake it. If you know the thing isn't real, there was never a wonder drug diagnosis process. It was just a lie. Yeah? When you know that's the case, you no longer need to go, well, why did she put the deep voice on? You don't need to ask that anymore. Well, why did she go before the cameras and say X? Everything she did was all done to cover up the fact that the wonder drug, the process that she was claiming, was not real. So in this instance, by comparison, everything they do is structured around getting around the fact that there is no sky vacuum to go to. That's it. That's there. Once you know there's no sky vacuum, that's it. You don't need to question anything else in terms of the validity, the motivation, the telemetry, why they filmed it in a certain way, why astronauts drop their keys in zero-G environments. You don't need to question any of it. The only reason they're doing any of it is because the whole notion of having a sky vacuum with a world in motion in it is a lie. It is not real. Once you know that, all of the bets are off.
My son will tell you that if you've never gone there, you can't say what's happening there.
That's
Just
true.
like
That's
you
a fair
can't say what
point.
they are,
That's a fair
then I
point. If
could
you've
say
never
you don't
gone
know
and
what it's like
no,
up there.
I agree. If you've never gone and got those Turkish delights from the White Witch, how the hell would you know they're not real?
Just you saying that it's fake doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah, I've
Because
got
they
footage
say-
of me
what do you
getting
mean
the.
it's
I've got
second law of
footage of
thermodynamics?
me going through the
You can operate
wardrobe.
differently.
Hello.
You have
It's
to
like he
look
didn't
this
even
way,
listen to a
right?
word. It's like he didn't listen. Hours of snow footage. The coats. I've got footage of the wardrobe working. I've got me. I've got Polaroid of me being handed the Turkish delights. What do you want? What more do you need? On a balance of probability,
Not what I'm
obviously
saying.
Narnia's real.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
You say gas pressure. They say you've never been up there to demonstrate if gas pressure is the same as it is down on Earth.
Now, gas pressure always needs to press on something. It's in the title. It's the clues in the name. Or we could go to NASA and define it.
What they say.
Or we could go to NASA and define it with a hostile witness. What do NASA say gas pressure is? Oh, they say it's the force exerted on the walls of the container, end quote, NASA. Yeah, it is. It's an antecedent-consequent relationship. You can't have gas pressure without a container.
You may behave differently in space, Nathan.
Yeah, argument from ignorance fallacy. Appeal to the future fallacy.
Well, we might know the distance to the stars.
You done.
You never can tell. You can't say that they don't behave
We got that
like
the
the
first.
geometry we see on Earth.
We got that the first 2 times. Yeah, your appeal to this is ultimately your appeal to a flat Earth measurement that's been turned into a globe and put into orbital motion by Kepler, and then scaled by Huygens, and then reified by the masses for 250, 300 years. And then saying, why couldn't it work? You haven't been out to an area of volume that's only come into existence by measuring a world that couldn't comport with that description. Flat. No, I don't need to go there to obey your argument from ignorance fallacy and appeal to the future fallacy. I don't need to do that. I know you can't have gas pressure without containment. Pressure is the pressing on it. If it's not pressing on something, that is to say, it goes up and there's just an area 10 to the minus 17 torr presented to it, it'll just carry on going. That's what gas does.
Is
Yeah, over here on Earth.
Yeah, natural law. That's what we're talking about. How gas behaves on Earth. What are you telling me? No, you go out to an area that gas doesn't behave like it behaves on Earth, and we look back in the area that gas doesn't behave like it behaves on Earth. Gas not behaving like it behaves on Earth from an area that doesn't exist. So you look back at a blue marble and say, oh, look, check at that. It's just contained around the non-containment of the blue marble, not dispersing into the black area around it. It just magically hovers at the Kármán line. And I can see that from an area of volume that can't possibly exist because the gas below that I'm watching not expand into it, doesn't expand into it from this area I'm viewing it from. No, it's
you
just
gotta
a
keep
straight...
talking because you know I got you.
No, it's
Do the
just...
stars obey? Do the stars obey the geometry on Earth? Yes or no?
What are you babbling about? Do the stars obey the
I'm
geometry
asking
of
you a
Earth?
question.
We're talking about taking pictures from sky vacuums of gas not expanding into areas of volume, Neil. We're not talking about geometry of stars when measuring flat planes. We're talking about deriving R values to put into heliocentric motion with orbits. Why is he rumpusing me?
Because you're not answering me. Yes or no? They
Yes.
don't obey our geometry, right? So how do you know that in space, gas pressure doesn't obey the same things that it obeys down here?
That's complete non sequitur.
Right?
You're just offering me up a non sequitur of if we can't measure heights of stars, then gas pressure can exist without containment. That's totally non sequitur, Neil. It's irritating me.
You're not getting it. Maybe
No, Neil, it's just non sequitur.
Right.
I do get it. I repeated it back. Don't tell me I don't get something I've just repeated verbatim back to you and paraphrased into the example you gave me, and then overcome it by pointing out that it's non sequitur. No, there is no connection between the measurement of elevation angles beyond the use of said elevation angles to Polaris to derive an R value off a flat plane to put the world into a spherical motion of orbit. That's the only connection. It doesn't have any connection, non sequitur, already identified, second time, I'm getting more annoyed, to gas pressure and its antecedent consequent relationship with containment. That is not connected in any way. Non sequitur.
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying just the way you could say that the stars don't obey our geometry on Earth, you could say the same thing, that gas pressure is not the same in space as it is on Earth. What the freak?
I can when I give an example of looking back at what happens on Earth from space. That's still a description of the gas on Earth from space, not obeying how gas behaves on Earth. You're looking back at gas not dispersing. So you're saying, oh, well, from the sky vacuum, what, the gas on Earth won't obey as it behaves on Earth? No, on Earth, gas expands. Looking back from an area that can't exist and saying, well, from this area that can't exist, the gas on Earth won't behave as it behaves on Earth. That's what you're asking me. Now, after pointing out that we can't acquire heights of stars with geometric utilization of angle measurements off a flat baseline that's simultaneously used to derive R to put the world in heliocentric motion in sky vacuums. I mean, don't tell me I don't understand when I can listen carefully.
You can see the landing site. I've actually had somebody on Twitter get really angry at me when I mentioned this before, and he said, oh, you could just put a telescope in your garden, you can look at the landing site.
No, you can't. So I contacted Goonhilly Observatory to ask whether or not they, with their biggest telescope in England, could see it, because a friend of mine had said that he had seen it through Goonhilly's telescope. So beyond looking at it through your garden, the reply I got from Goonhilly was that no, the telescope was shut temporarily for refurbishment, but nevertheless, even if I had have been able to visit, it would not be possible to see any of these artifacts claimed to be left in a sky vacuum laden visit that we've debunked, because it would be beyond the angular resolution capabilities of Hubble if you were to turn it round and look. So no, definitely not. There is no evidence that we can acquire with our own eyes or with the very best telescopes claimed to be in sky vacuums, because it's beyond the angular resolution. Something not accounted for in Earth curve maths, I might add.
I see. It's pick and choose what you want. I see how it goes.
I don't know what Neil's got a bee in his bonnet about, but I'll shout out to Chow Yun Cat nonetheless. Shout out for the super chat. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Hebrews 13:8. Thank you very much for the super chat.
That's correct.
Yeah,
You can pick and choose what you want to do up in space. I see how it's going here.
We're about halfway through this video. We'll probably give it a couple more minutes. We've been live for a long time now, so almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I'm
Nathan?
getting a bit irritated, so I've got to round out at some point.
Nathan,
Yes.
they calculated what size telescope you would need to see the Apollo relics on the moon, and it was estimated to be around 120 meters.
How big's Hubble?
That's huge. There's no such telescope even close to that.
Yeah,
Most are in the 10
well,
meter
the reason
range.
I was asking is was to try and describe the orders of magnitude larger than what we currently have would have to be in effect in order to see it at the heliocentric distances that are claimed after deriving the distances and the light speed for return signals from reflectors, I might add, from elevation angle measurements to Polaris at their minimum to give you a radial value on a flat plane, to then stretch the latitude system, also measured with respect to Polaris on a flat plane, around a globe for Kepler to put it into orbital motion. And then with the scaling values acquired from Huygens' genius assumption that that same radial value measured off a flat plane is the spherical radial value for Venus to scale this whole garbage system in motion in a sky vacuum in violation of the second law of thermodynamics. Anybody got anything else to add before I round out the live stream?
You just don't understand what I was saying.
Yeah, I do. I paraphrased it back twice.
You're not getting it.
I don't know what this little shtick's about, Neil, but I do get it. I follow. And even when it's convoluted from your own lack of clarity, I can still paraphrase what the situation is into heliocentric rhetoric, and even have the empathy to understand somebody who's not looking at it from a flat Earth perspective, nay, even understanding that there's a sky vacuum in violation of natural law when they ponder the probability of fake footage. I mean, what we've covered today is pretty much garbage, Neil, and you're kind of sidetracking that a little bit, but there we go. Share your pain. Your son's a heliocentrist. I get it. Anybody else other than Neil?
What's that supposed to mean?
I mean, you've already had your say.
Still say
Still
none of us
pondering.
have gone there to see.
I'm still trying to ponder your point, Neil.
Me too.
Genuinely, I'm not being funny. I'm not attacking it because I don't get it.
We say that the stars don't obey our geometry and they're in space, correct? So how do we know that gas pressure doesn't obey?
Stop. No, we don't say that stars are in space.
Well, where the heck are they?
First, they're up there, look, in the sky, as far as I can see.
Oh, now they're
I'm
up
not
there.
invoking space.
Yeah, no, they've always been. No, they've always been just up there.
Oh, I see how you're getting. See, you're getting grimy. I
No.
know what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, we'll have to ponder it in the after show.
Right, the first part of your statement I agreed with. They don't obey geometry, yeah? And then you said unnecessarily in space. Reify in space for no reason. I don't, that's my disconnect.
Okay, so up there. All right, so up there, the gas pressure doesn't obey the same rules that it obeys down here as it does up there. It's
Why?
the same
Why
thing.
would you say that? No, you wouldn't.
Are we done? Let's hope so.
You just ain't getting it.
Okay, well, I am going to, on that note, ask anybody watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams to stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, gifted out memberships and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Another massive thank you to Discord and G+, and I'll see you all in the next video.